Okay, so get this. Today we're looking at how to boost your English fluency with just 19 words.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy, right? Sounds too good to be true, but that's what this whole deep dive is about.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the source material. It's like a crash course for English fluency. Just 19 words.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of people think that to be fluent, you have to know tons of words.
Right.
But this is like the opposite. It's about using the right words at the right time.
Oh, I like that. Like having a toolbox.
Exactly.
With just the tools you need.
Yeah.
So where do we even start with this? There's like all these different categories in the source material.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is transition words.
Okay, transition words.
You know those little words that connect your ideas?
Like however and therefore.
Exactly. Those are great examples.
Yeah, we use those all the time.
Yeah. But they're so important.
Yeah, I never really thought about why they're important.
Well, think about it this way.
Okay.
If you were listening to someone and they just jumped from one idea to the next without any transitions,
It'd be so jarring.
that sounds so spread.
Where are you going with this? Yeah.
So transitions help everything flow. And when you use them well, you sound more organized, more articulate.
Right, because you're guiding the listener.
Exactly.
You're not just throwing random ideas out there.
It's like you're saying, hey, stick with me here. I'm taking you somewhere.
Okay, that makes sense. So those little words really make a difference.
They do.
Now, I want to talk about something that I struggle with.
Okay.
It's those power verbs and clarity adjectives. Like, why say something is good
Right.
when you could say it's compelling?
Exactly. Or insightful.
Yes. Think about a time when you were just captivated by something. What words would you use to describe it?
Exactly. You want to use words that paint a picture.
Okay.
And strong verbs do that.
So instead of saying, I made a new strategy, you say, I implemented a new strategy.
Exactly. So that's much stronger.
Oh, it sounds so much better.
Right.
But sometimes I just don't have those words at my fingertips.
Right.
I know what I want to say, but
Yeah, it can be tough.
yeah.
But that's the beauty of this 19-word thing. You don't have to learn a million words.
Yeah.
Just focus on these key ones.
So quality over quantity.
Exactly. And it's not about trying to sound super smart.
Right.
It's about being clear and effective.
Oh.
For example, if you're sending a professional email
Yeah.
and there's a problem, instead of saying, this is bad,
Oh, right.
you could say, this presents a challenge.
Okay, so you're still acknowledging the problem,
Right.
but in a more professional way.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. Okay, now for the one that always trips me up.
Oh, tell me.
Affect versus effect.
Oh, classical.
I swear, I still mix these up.
Don't worry, you're not alone. Even native speakers mess these up.
Oh, thank goodness.
But it's so important to get them right.
Yeah, if you're giving a presentation or something,
Right.
it can undermine your whole message.
Exactly.
So how do we finally conquer this?
Okay, so remember this. Affect is usually a verb,
Other.
meaning to influence.
Okay.
And effect is usually a noun, meaning the result.
Okay.
So the weather affected my mood.
It influenced how you felt.
Right. And the effect of the weather was that I stayed inside.
That was the outcome. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense now.
Good.
So we've got our transition words, our power verbs and adjectives, and we've tackled those tricky word pairs. What's next?
Let's talk about natural phrases.
Ooh.
Those little expressions that make you sound.
Like a native speaker.
Exactly.
I'm ready to unlock the secrets. What have we got?
Well, the source material mentions things like out of the blue, hit the nail on the head, think outside the box.
Okay, so I actually use those.
Yeah.
But I never thought about how they might sound
Yeah.
to someone learning English.
Right. Because for native speakers,
Yeah.
they just come naturally.
Right.
But they add so much personality to your language.
Instead of just stating facts.
Exactly.
You're adding flavor.
Right.
It's like adding spices to a dish.
I love that analogy.
So the other day, I was telling my friend
Yeah.
how I saw someone I hadn't seen in years.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I ran into him out of the blue.
Yeah.
It just felt more natural than saying, I saw him unexpectedly.
Yeah, those natural phrases, they just add another level.
They do. I'm definitely going to pay more attention to those.
They're good.
And try to use them more.
Yeah.
It's amazing how these small tweaks can really make a difference.
That's what this whole 19-word approach is about.
Yeah.
Giving you the tools to communicate better.
So we've got our transitions, our power verbs, tricky pairs, natural phrases. What's the final tool in our fluency toolbox?
Let's talk about those advanced nouns.
Oh, okay.
You know, words like dilemma, momentum, consensus.
Yeah, those are the ones that make you sound really smart.
They do.
But I'll be honest, I sometimes get a little intimidated by them.
Yeah.
Like I'll be in a conversation and think, oof, there's a better word for this.
Right.
But I just can't think of it.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
It's normal to feel that way.
Okay.
Because we don't use those words every day.
Right.
But when you do use them,
Yeah.
it shows a deeper understanding of the language.
Like you're saying, hey, I know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, challenge accepted. I'm going to try to use those more.
Good.
Maybe I'll impress myself.
I think you will. And remember, it's not about sounding smarter than everyone.
Right.
It's about using language effectively.
Okay, so we've explored all these categories
Yeah.
of these 19 words.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually put this into practice? The source material does mention some practice tips.
It does. It talks about the importance of practice.
Right, because it's not enough to just know the words.
Exactly. You have to use them.
You have to actually use them.
Yes. And one tip is to start small.
Okay,
Don't try to use all 19 words at once.
right. That would be overwhelming.
It would be. So just focus on one or two at a time.
That's a great point. It's like breaking it down into smaller steps
Exactly.
so it feels less daunting.
And remember, fluency is a journey.
Not a destination.
Right. So be patient with yourself and celebrate your progress.
Okay, I love that.
It even says, like, try to use just one new word a day.
Oh, wow.
Like, imagine you
Yeah.
could add 365 new words to your vocabulary in a year.
That's amazing.
Oh.
That would totally change the game.
Right.
And doesn't even sound that hard.
No.
I could definitely use one new word a day.
Yeah.
It's like a fun little challenge.
It is. It's all about that momentum, you know?
Yeah, those little wins.
Exactly. It keeps you going.
And it makes it feel less overwhelming.
Totally.
Like this whole less is more idea.
Yeah.
Focus on the essentials,
Right.
master those, and then you'll sound more fluent.
Exactly. It's about being intentional, right?
Yeah.
Choosing the words that really matter.
You know, we've all had those moments where someone says just the right thing
Yes.
and it just hits you.
It's powerful, right?
It is. Like it makes you think or feel something.
Exactly.
And that's the power of choosing your words carefully.
It is. You know, there's that famous quote. It's
Yeah.
like, I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time.
That's so true.
Right. Because being concise,
Yeah,
it actually takes more effort,
it does.
but it's worth it.
Yeah, it's the difference between just speaking and
Ah.
really communicating.
Exactly.
Think about a speech that's moved you. It's probably not full of like jargon or super complicated words.
Right.
It's simple but powerful.
Yeah. The words resonate with you.
They do. It's like
Like what?
it's like a chef who uses just a few high quality ingredients
Okay. Yeah.
but creates an amazing dish.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, they're not trying to like overwhelm you with flavors.
Right.
It's all carefully selected.
So if we apply that to language,
Yeah.
it's about being mindful of how we combine words.
To get our message across.
Exactly.
It's like the grammar of fluency.
It is. It's not just knowing the words. It's
Yeah.
how you put them together.
Yeah, the structure, the tone, the emphasis.
That.
You know, as we're talking, I'm realizing fluency isn't just about sounding native.
No.
It's about connecting with people.
Exactly. It's like building bridges.
Yeah, between minds and hearts.
When you can express yourself clearly,
Yeah.
it opens up so many possibilities.
I mean, you're free to share your ideas, your stories,
Yeah.
without feeling limited by language.
Exactly.
That's so empowering.
It is. Fluency lets you participate in conversations, build relationships, advocate for things you care about.
Wow.
You can even inspire others with your words.
I love that. It's about having a voice
Yes.
and using it.
And, you know, I've definitely held back from saying things.
Really?
Yeah, because I wasn't sure if I could say it right.
Oh, I get that.
But with practice,
Yeah.
those barriers come down.
Okay, so this 19-word approach,
Yeah.
it's like a starting point to build
From
from.
feeling intimidated to feeling empowered.
We talk a lot about personal growth on this show.
Yeah.
And I think language is such a big part of that.
Totally.
It's how we express ourselves.
Yeah.
How we connect with the world.
It's essential.
And it's a journey that never really ends.
It doesn't. Language is always changing.
That's true.
So there's always more to learn.
Okay. I think this is a good place to take a pause,
Sound good.
but don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back.
We have more to share. All right. So we're back. And I was just thinking, this whole fluency thing, it's not just about sounding like a native speaker.
Right.
It's about really connecting with people.
It is. It's like you're able to
Yeah.
Express yourself more fully.
So someone listening might be thinking, okay, this is all great, but how do I actually,
Yeah.
use this?
Well, remember that source material?
Yeah.
It really stresses that you don't have to know every word in the dictionary.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. It's about
Yeah.
choosing the right words
Okay.
to express yourself clearly.
And confident.
Yes.
And what I like about this approach
Oh.
is it's for anyone, no matter your level.
Exactly. Beginner, advanced.
Yeah.
It's about shifting your mindset
Okay.
from feeling overwhelmed
Yeah.
to focusing on the essentials, like those 19 words.
So it's like having a strong foundation.
Yes.
Instead of trying to build like a skyscraper on sand.
Exactly. And remember, it's a journey,
Yeah.
not a destination.
Be patient, celebrate the progress.
And enjoy those aha moments.
I love those. Like when you use a new word and it just clicks.
It feels so good. You know, one thing I keep thinking about is
Yeah.
how important it is to be intentional with language.
Oh, yeah. That's been coming up for me too.
It's not just about speaking fluently.
Yeah.
It's about speaking thoughtfully.
Choosing your words carefully.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Making sure your message is clear.
So it has the impact you want.
Right. Like it's the difference between
Yeah.
throwing a dart randomly
Okay.
and aiming for the bullseye.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Intentionality brings focus.
Yes. And it shows in how people perceive you
Okay.
when you use language precisely.
Yeah.
You sound more confident, more credible.
It's like you're saying, I respect your time,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to make every word count.
Exactly.
So, to wrap things up, I have a question for our listeners out there.
Okay. What is it?
We focused on these 19 words, but what other words
Yeah.
or phrases do you think are essential for fluency?
I love that question
Good.
because
Yeah.
it shows that language is always changing.
Right.
There are always new words to learn.
New things to discover.
So keep expanding your vocabulary.
That's such a good reminder. It's a lifelong journey,
It is.
no matter how fluent you think you are.
There's always more to learn.
I love that.
Oh.
Okay, so to our listener, keep your ears open,
Mm-hmm.
your mind curious, and your tongue practicing.
The world needs to hear your voice.
Yes. And fluency is the key to unlocking its potential.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
All right, so are you ready to like really level up those conversation skills? Today, we're going to dive deep into how to start conversations. You know, the kind that don't just fizzle out after, just a couple of awkward exchanges.
Right.
And so get our source today. It's like, it gives you like 25 questions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But these aren't your typical like, small talk questions.
Okay.
They're like designed to help you really connect with people like on a deeper level.
Okay, so
Right.
not just like, how's the weather?
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
whether you're at, networking event or a party or even just, chatting with someone new at the coffee shop.
I really like how our source today breaks these questions down into 5 categories.
Oh, yeah.
It's like having a roadmap, for all these different conversational situations.
I like that. A roadmap.
Yeah, so you've got like your general questions. Those are perfect for the initial icebreakers.
Uh-huh.
And then there are ones specifically for social settings, travel, and hobbies, work or school, and even like fun personal preferences.
Okay. I totally get the whole like categorization thing.
Right.
But like, how does asking someone about their favorite hobby actually lead to a deeper connection?
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm just going through the motions with these kinds of questions.
Oh, I totally hear you.
Yeah.
But think about it this way. Instead of like asking a closed-ended question like, do you have any hobbies?
Right.
Which, you'll probably just get a yes or no.
Yeah.
You could ask something like, what project are you most excited about right now?
Ooh.
And suddenly you're not just asking about hobbies.
Yeah.
You're inviting them to share what they're passionate about.
Oh.
And that's where the magic happens.
I like that it's like shifting from a checklist to like uncovering what makes someone tick.
Yeah.
And I guess the different categories help you tailor your approach depending on the situation, right?
Exactly. So let's say you're at a networking event.
Okay.
You could try a question from the work or school category, like what's the most interesting challenge you faced in your work recently? It's way more engaging than just asking, what do you do?
What's funny is I actually tried that question at a networking event last week.
Oh, yeah.
And the person I was talking to, they totally lit up. They told me this whole story about a project they were working on.
Oh, wow.
And it turned into a really fascinating conversation. We even ended up exchanging contact info.
See?
Yeah.
It works.
It really does.
It's all about, finding those subtle ways to unlock deeper conversations.
Right.
And our source emphasizes that it's not just about the questions themselves.
Right.
It's about how you deliver them.
Oh, right, right. The source talks about smiling, being friendly, and most importantly, not worrying about making mistakes.
Yeah.
I think that's something we all struggle with.
Oh, for sure.
Especially in new situations,
Right.
we get so caught up in trying to sound perfect
Right.
that we forget to just be ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's such a crucial point. It's not about flawless execution.
Yeah.
It's about genuine connection.
Right.
People can tell when you're genuinely interested, even if you stumble over your words a bit.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like that saying, people might forget like what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Right.
I think that totally applies to conversations too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's all about creating a welcoming space, where people feel like they can open up.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of opening up, the source also talks about like the power of open-ended questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of curious, do you have like a favorite example from those 25 questions that really shows this?
Let me think.
Yeah.
Oh, the one that pops into my mind is, what's your dream destination?
Okay.
It's from the travel and hobbies category,
Yeah.
but I think it goes way beyond just travel. It gets at people's like hopes and dreams, their sense of adventure.
I see what you mean.
It can spark a conversation about what truly excites them.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's not just about where they want to go on vacation. It's like a window into their inner world.
Exactly.
And you could like adapt that to other areas too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's a skill you'd love to learn someday?
Exactly. It invites them to share something they might not normally talk about.
Yeah, I feel like I get stuck asking the same old questions sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how's your weekend? Or what are you working on? It's like I'm on autopilot.
Yeah.
And the conversation never goes anywhere interesting.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yeah.
It's easy to fall back on those default questions, especially when you're feeling nervous.
Right.
But what I love about this source is that it gives you a way to break out of that rut.
Yeah.
To think more carefully about your questions and what you really want to learn about the other person.
So true. It's not about like memorizing a script or something. It's
Right.
about having a strategy.
Exactly.
Oh, and the source also mentions active listening.
Yes.
What does that mean to you, like when you're starting conversations?
Well, for me, active listening is about being present.
Okay.
It's not just hearing their words, but truly absorbing what they're saying, paying attention to their body language, and responding in a way that shows you're engaged.
So it's not just about asking the right questions.
Right.
It's about making the other person feel heard.
Exactly. You're creating a space where they feel understood.
Okay, so it's like building a bridge of understanding.
Yes, I like that.
Each question is like a stepping stone.
Yeah.
And active listening is what holds it all together.
I love that analogy.
Benta.
And it reminds us that conversation is a two-way street.
Right. It's about giving and receiving, asking and listening.
Exactly. And when both people are present and engaged,
Yeah.
that's when you get those like real moments of connection.
Those aha moments.
Yes, you don't get those from small talk.
Okay, so I'm sold. These 25 questions are way more powerful than I thought.
I know, right?
But I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Do you think there are times when a simple, direct question is better than an open-ended one?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And you're right. There are times when a direct question is more appropriate.
Okay.
Like if you need a specific piece of information or you're trying to clarify something.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, when you're trying to build rapport,
Right.
open-ended questions are the way to go.
Makes sense. You got to use the right tool for the job.
Exactly. And sometimes it's about being playful with your questions, too.
No, yeah.
Don't be afraid to add a little humor,
The source has this question in the fun category that always cracks me up.
Oh, yeah?
It's, what's the most embarrassing song you secretly love?
Oh, that's a good one.
I know, right?
It's guaranteed to get people laughing.
And sharing stories.
Yeah, it's a great way to break the ice.
Exactly. It shows you don't take yourself too seriously.
Right, because in the end, conversations are about connecting with other people.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best way to do that is to just let loose and have fun.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like we've covered so much in this deep dive.
I know, right?
Like my whole view on how to start conversations has like totally shifted.
It's pretty cool how something so simple, like asking the right questions,
Right.
can make such a big difference in how we connect with people.
Totally. So as we wrap up here,
Yeah.
what are like the main takeaways you'd want our listeners to remember?
Well, first of all, You know those categories.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember those having like a mental toolkit of questions for all those different situations?
Yeah.
That could really help you feel more confident. You know,
I like that.
no matter what the conversation throws at you.
It's like having a secret weapon for those moments, when you just go blank.
Exactly. And don't forget about the magic of open-ended questions.
Oh, right.
Those are key to like really getting those deep conversations going,
Yeah. Yeah. It's about asking questions that get people to share their stories and their passions.
Yes. Their unique perspectives.
And of course, we can't forget about active listening.
Well, that's so important.
It's like the glue that holds it all together.
Yeah. It lets you build those real connections.
It's amazing how much we can learn about someone when we really listen to what they have to say.
I know it's true. So before we go, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
Think about the last time you had a really great conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The kind that you just felt so engaged in.
Yeah.
What made it so memorable? Was it a certain question? Or the way the other person listened?
Yeah.
When we think back on our own experiences,
right.
we can learn even more about how to have amazing conversations.
That's such a good point. We're always learning,
We are.
So go out there, experiment with these questions, and most importantly, have fun connecting with people.
Happy conversing.
All right. Ready to unlock some serious word power?
Oh, yeah?
We're taking a deep dive
Absolutely.
into 15 words
Okay.
that can make your English seriously sing.
Mm-hmm.
Think Shakespeare,
Uh-huh.
but way less frilly collar,
Right. Not stuffy.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretentious at all.
No, not at all. These are words that once you know them,
Yeah.
you can really use them to make your communication better,
It's true.
more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So our source material is an article. It's called 15 Words for Outstanding English.
Okay.
But we're going to go deeper than that, right?
Absolutely.
We're going to figure out how to really use these words.
Mm-hmm.
So first up is perspicacious.
Mm.
They describe it as insightful, perceptive,
Mm-hmm.
like a detective cracking a case wide open.
I like that.
But what makes this more than just,
Right.
smart?
Being smart.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's that ability to see what others miss.
Okay.
So a perspicacious person doesn't just gather the information, connect the dots. They really understand the why behind the what.
I see. So it's not just about noticing stuff. It's about...
It's with the insight, yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Think about, a leader who can predict market trends or something.
Ooh, or a friend.
Yeah.
Who just gives amazing advice.
Yeah, like really on point advice.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's way more interesting than just being observant, like you said.
Yeah. Insightful is really the key here.
The article gives the example. Her perspicacious comments during the meeting showed her deep understanding of the project.
Okay.
I mean, that sounds like someone who's about to get a promotion.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly. And it's not just about business.
Yeah.
It's relevant in any field. I mean,
for sure.
A perspicacious historian can reframe our view of the past. A perspicacious artist picks up on those subtle emotions
I see.
we might not even realize we're expressing.
Yeah.
It's really powerful stuff.
Okay. All right. Now this next word, obfuscate.
Ooh. Obfuscate.
This one sounds a little more like villainous, right?
Sure.
Like a bad guy.
A little bit sneaky.
Yeah.
The obfuscate is to deliberately make something unclear.
Okay.
Muddy the waters, so to speak.
Yeah.
The article's example talks about like a lawyer trying to obfuscate the facts to confuse a jury.
Right. It's almost like a verbal smokescreen.
Yeah.
Just to kind of throw people off.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's not always about being like intentionally deceptive.
Good point.
Is it?
No, sometimes people obfuscate without realizing it.
Oh, interesting.
Have you ever been stuck listening to someone explain something simple in the most complicated way possible?
Yes.
They might be unintentionally obfuscating.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the key here is to be aware of when we're doing it.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nobody wants to be that person in the meeting. So how about something a little lighter?
Okay. Yeah.
Ubiquitous.
This
one feels very relevant to our world right now. It does. Like the modern world.
It means found everywhere.
Okay.
Literally
everywhere.
Yeah.
I like it.
The article talks about the ubiquitous smell of coffee in Paris.
Ooh.
Which
For anyone who's been, it's spot on.
Spot on.
But think beyond the physical. Like what's ubiquitous?
Yeah, what's
your world?
Ubiquitous in your world right now?
Easy. Social media trends.
Ooh, yes.
They pop up.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking about them. Then poof.
Gone.
Replaced by the next big thing.
They're so fleeting.
It's fascinating and exhausting all at once.
Yes.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that fleeting nature, that's key to understanding ephemeral.
Yeah.
Our next word.
Okay.
It's about things that are beautiful, but temporary.
I like that.
Like cherry blossoms in bloom.
Beautiful. Or viral trends, as you said.
Yeah, exactly.
The article says the beauty of the cherry blossoms is ephemeral, lasting only a week.
I know.
It makes you realize, like, how precious those moments are.
It's true.
Like, you really have to be present, knowing it's not going to last forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can apply that to more than just tangible things. Feelings can be ephemeral, too.
Oh, wow.
Like that rush of excitement when you start a new project or even the kind of bittersweet nostalgia of remembering childhood summers.
Ooh, deep thoughts happening over here.
I know, right?
Now, I gotta admit, discombobulate is just plain fun to say.
Discombobulate.
It sounds like what happens after one too many spins on a merry-go-round.
It does, doesn't it? It does, yeah.
The dictionary definition is to confuse or bewilder.
Right.
But there's almost a playful clumsiness to it.
I agree.
That I kind of like.
I like that too.
The article uses the example of being discombobulated by like a tough interview question, which, I mean, we've all been there, right?
Oh, we've all been there.
But wouldn't you say there's a difference between being discombobulated and being straight up panicked?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Because discombobulation is more of a temporary state of like, what just happened? It's like your brain needs a moment to catch up.
Yeah. So it's not always a bad thing.
No, not at all.
Sometimes a little discombobulation can be invigorating.
Perhaps, yeah.
Right.
It can shake us out of our routine, force us to think differently.
Oh, I like that.
And that leads us perfectly into our next word.
Okay.
Which embodies this idea of surprise in a very positive way.
Ooh, okay.
Serendipity.
Ooh, serendipity. I love that word.
It's a good one.
It's like stumbling on a hidden treasure when you least expect it.
You got it.
The article talks about the serendipity of like finding a beautiful spot while hiking.
Okay, yeah.
But it can be so much more than that, right?
It can, absolutely.
Yeah.
Serendipity is about those lucky coincidences that shape our lives in unexpected ways.
Yeah.
Meeting a future partner, discovering a new passion. Those moments where it feels like the universe is conspiring in your favor.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I think what makes serendipity so delightful is that we can't control it.
Right.
It just happens.
Yeah.
And we get to enjoy the ride.
Exactly.
Speaking of enjoying the ride.
Okay.
Let's talk about voracious.
Ooh, voracious.
It's a word often associated with reading.
Right.
But it applies to anything we approach with, like intense enthusiasm.
That's right.
The article gives the example of someone who's a voracious reader, finishing 3 books a week.
Wow.
I admire that kind of dedication. Yeah. But wouldn't you say voracious goes beyond just
I think so.
Quantity?
Absolutely.
Right.
It's about that hunger, that intense desire to consume and experience whatever it is you're passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah, whether it's
knowledge, travel.
Right, or even, dare I say, podcasts.
Maybe.
Right.
Podcast.
Now, wouldn't that be a compliment?
That would
to be known as a voracious listener.
A voracious listener.
Of the deep dive.
Of the deep dive. That's what we want. That's right.
Okay.
So, speaking of aspirations.
Yes.
Let's talk about eloquent.
Ooh, eloquent.
Yeah. This word kind of embodies the ideal of expressing oneself beautifully and persuasively.
The article uses the example of like a speech so eloquent it moves the audience to tears.
Okay.
But it's not just about grand gestures, right?
Right.
Can't everyday conversations be eloquent?
It can. Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Because eloquence isn't about flowery language or trying to sound smart.
Right.
It's about choosing your words carefully to convey your meaning with clarity and passion, maybe even a touch of poetry.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So it's about being intentional.
It is.
With our language, even
in casual
settings.
Yeah, that's something I think we can all work on.
We can all work on that.
Right. Yeah.
For sure. And as we become more eloquent, we open up new possibilities for connection, understanding.
Yeah.
Even, dare I say, a touch of magic in our everyday lives.
I like where this is going.
I know, right?
And luckily, we have even more words to uncover.
We do.
Stay tuned.
Yes.
Because in the next part of our deep dive, we'll be exploring words that delve into the complexities of human nature.
Okay.
Emotions.
Yeah.
Maybe even a few paradoxes.
Ooh, paradoxes.
Along the way.
I'm excited.
So stick around. Welcome back to the deep dive.
It's amazing.
We're knee-deep in fascinating words here.
I know, right?
Exploring how they can help us communicate better.
Absolutely.
And now I'm ready to tackle some of these words that deal with, shall we say, less flattering aspects of human nature. All right, let's do it.
Up first, we have sycophant.
Ah, yes, the flatterer. The yes man, the person who praises insincerely to gain favor.
Right.
The article says a sycophant might tell you your new haircut looks great, even if they secretly think it's a disaster.
Yeah, that's rough.
I know.
But isn't there a fine line between being polite and being a sycophant?
Yeah.
Like, what if I genuinely do like your new haircut?
It's all about intention.
Okay.
A sincere compliment comes from a place of genuine appreciation.
Right.
Sycophancy is all about manipulation.
Oh, okay.
About saying what you think someone wants to hear to get something in return.
So it's about being aware of those underlying motives.
Exactly.
Are we trying to build someone up, or are we just trying to butter them up?
Exactly. Butter them up.
And speaking of being aware of underlying motives, our next word is a bit of a head scratcher. Paradoxical.
Paradoxical.
It refers to those situations that seem contradictory, but might actually contain a hidden truth.
Oh, interesting.
The example they use is, it's paradoxical that the more connected we are online, the lonelier some people feel.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, how can those two things coexist?
That's the beauty of a paradox.
Right.
It forces us to question our assumptions and dig deeper.
Okay.
On the surface, constant connection should mean less loneliness.
Right.
But maybe it's the quality, not the quantity of those connections that matters most.
That's a good point. It's like having 1,000 Facebook friends.
Right.
But still feeling like you have no one to call when you're down.
Exactly. And that leads us to a word that describes a potential solution.
Okay.
To that feeling of isolation. Cathartic.
Oh, cathartic.
It's about releasing pent-up emotions.
Right.
In a healthy way.
Yeah.
Think of crying during a sad movie. Or writing in a journal.
Right. The article mentions that writing in a journal every night was a cathartic experience for someone.
It's like purging those emotions onto the page so they don't stay bottled up inside.
Yeah, and catharsis can come from any activity, right, that allows us to process and release those emotions.
It could be dancing, singing, creating art, even having a heart-to-heart conversation with a trusted friend.
It's like giving ourselves permission to feel those feelings fully so we can move through them and come out the other side.
Exactly. And sometimes what helps us move through those feelings is the realization that we're not alone.
Oh, okay.
And that's where our next word comes in.
All right.
Myriad.
Myriad, okay.
It signifies an abundance, a vast number of something.
Right.
The example the article gives is there are myriad reasons why climate change needs immediate attention. Wow. It really underscores the urgency and the complexity of the issue.
But myriad can also be used in a more
personal way.
Yeah.
Think of the myriad experiences that shape us, the myriad choices we make each day, the myriad people whose lives intersect with our own.
It makes you realize like how interconnected we all are. And maybe that's a comforting thought, knowing we're all navigating this vast, complex world together.
Right.
Speaking of navigating the world,
okay,
let's talk about a word that embodies the essence of something.
Right.
Quintessential.
Quintessential?
It's like capturing the soul of something in its purest form.
That's right.
The article mentions, you know, a dish being the quintessential Italian meal.
Right. But how do we apply that to
right. Exactly. How do we
something more abstract?
Yeah, like a personality trait.
Like a personality trait.
Yeah.
Think of someone you'd consider the quintessential optimist.
Okay.
They radiate positivity, always see the silver lining,
right.
lift everyone's spirits.
Right.
They embody the very essence of optimism.
So it's about identifying those core qualities that define something.
Exactly. A person, a place, or even an idea.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
Right.
And that brings us to a word that describes a quality I think we could all use a little more of in the world. Magnanimous.
Magnanimous.
It's about being generous, forgiving, and rising above pettiness.
I like that.
Especially when you have the upper hand.
Especially when you have the upper hand.
The article talks about a magnanimous gesture of, like, donating winnings to charity.
Right.
It's about acting with kindness and compassion.
Yeah.
Even when you don't have to.
Even when you don't have to, that's right.
It's a powerful word.
It is.
Because it suggests, like, certain nobility of spirit.
Think of a leader who, even after winning a hard-fought election, extends an olive branch to their opponent.
Ooh, that's good.
Or a friend who forgives a betrayal and moves forward with grace.
Okay, that's a high bar.
It is a high bar.
But I love the idea of, like, striving for that level of magnanimity.
Absolutely.
In our interactions with others.
In our everyday lives.
Right.
Yeah.
And finally, we come to a word that I think perfectly encapsulates the human experience.
Right.
Ineffable.
Ineffable.
Yeah.
This one always gives me chills.
I know, right?
It's about those moments
that are so powerful, so profound that words just can't do them justice.
Right.
The article mentions the ineffable beauty of the Northern Lights.
Yes. It's about those experiences that touch us on a soul level.
Yeah.
That feeling of awe when gazing at the stars.
Right.
The overwhelming love for a child.
Yeah.
The deep grief of losing someone dear.
It's like our language, as vast as it is, sometimes reaches its limits.
It does.
And maybe that's okay.
Maybe that's okay.
Maybe some things are meant to be felt rather than explained.
Yeah, perhaps that's the ultimate lesson here. Language is a powerful tool, but it's not the only tool we have for connecting with the world and each other.
Okay, I'm feeling all introspective now.
A little bit.
But before we get too lost in the ineffable, we have one last word to tackle.
We do.
In our next segment. It's a word that's often used to describe those who possess outstanding English.
Right.
But it can also be a bit of a double-edged sword.
Ooh, a double-edged sword.
Stay tuned to find out what it is. Welcome back to the Deep Dive, word nerds. We've journeyed through words for perceptiveness, fleeting beauty, and even those tricky paradoxes of human nature.
Oh, yeah.
And now for our final word.
Okay.
We're tackling one that's often used to describe those who have, like, a mastery of language.
Okay.
Articulate.
Articulate. It's a word that carries a certain weight, doesn't it?
It does.
To be articulate is to express oneself clearly and effectively, whether through spoken or written word.
The article highlights how someone's articulate arguments can, like, sway a debate.
Okay, yeah.
But it also mentions that the word can be used to subtly reinforce societal biases.
That's an important point to consider.
Right.
Who gets praised for being articulate? And who gets dismissed or overlooked?
Yeah.
It's not always about who has the best ideas, but about who has the power and privilege to be heard.
So while articulate can be a compliment, it's important to be aware of the context.
The context.
And the potential biases at play.
Right, exactly.
It's like we've been saying throughout this whole deep dive. Words have power.
They do.
And how we use them matters.
And how we use them matters. It all comes back to that,
right?
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
We've explored 15 words today.
We have.
Each with its own unique shade of meaning and potential impact.
Right.
But the real takeaway isn't about memorizing definitions.
No.
It's about becoming more conscious, more intentional, more artful in how we use language.
It's like we've been given this new set of tools, and now it's up to us to use them wisely.
Wisely, yes.
To build bridges.
To build bridges.
Rather than walls.
Yes.
To express ourselves authentically.
Authentically.
And to listen deeply.
To the voices of others.
Deeply, that's right.
And maybe, just maybe, as we become more skilled with words, we can create a world where everyone has the opportunity to be heard.
To be heard.
Understood. Understood.
And valued.
And valued.
For the unique perspectives.
Absolutely.
They bring to the conversation.
That's a beautiful thought to end on.
It is. It is.
So to our listeners out there,
yes,
what are your takeaways from this deep dive?
What really resonated with you? Which words resonated with you the most? And how do you plan to use them?
How are you going to use them?
In your own light.
Yeah. We encourage you to keep exploring.
Yeah.
Keep questioning.
Keep playing.
And keep playing with language.
Yes.
Because the more we understand the power of words, the better equipped we are to use them for good.
And who knows, maybe you'll even discover a few new favorite words.
Some new favorites.
Along the way.
Along the way, hit us up on social media.
Yes.
Share your thoughts, your stories.
Let us know.
Your word nerd adventures.
Yes, we want to hear it all.
Until next time.
Keep those words flowing.
Keep those words flowing. Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're looking into something really interesting. It's hidden fluency. Those signs that you're actually way better at English than you think.
That's a good one.
We found this article and it's called 14 Signs You're More Fluent in English Than You Think. And honestly, some of these are pretty surprising. I had no idea.
Yeah. You know, we always think of fluency as this perfect thing, but this article looks at it differently.
Yeah.
Like how well you actually communicate, not just, perfect grammar and all that.
Yeah, that's what I liked about it. It's like real world stuff, not just textbook rules.
Yeah.
So, where do we even start with these 14 signs?
Well, a bunch of them are kind of connected, so we can group them up. Like, have you ever watched a movie, no subtitles or anything, and you still got what was going on, even if you didn't get every single word?
All the time. Wait, does that actually mean something about fluency? The article says it's like you're understanding the context, which is super important for communication. Like you're picking up on clues, not just the words themselves.
Yeah.
The situation, the other people, how they're talking.
Right. Right. That makes sense. It's kind of like when someone uses a word you don't know, but you figure it out from the rest of what they're saying.
Exactly. Or even reading an article with some tough vocabulary. You get the main idea without looking up everything. The article says that's another sign.
So it's not about knowing every word, it's how you use the ones you do know.
Yeah. And this connects to another interesting thing. As you get more fluent, you might not be translating everything in your head anymore.
What? Really? I don't even realize I'm doing that.
It gets so automatic you don't notice. Like ordering food at a restaurant. Are you translating the whole menu before you talk?
No way. I just look and order what I want.
See? That probably means you're thinking in English already, which is like a big fluency thing.
Wow, this is making me rethink my whole English level. I didn't know these little things. Could be such a big deal.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And it gets even cooler. The article says even how you think in English changes. Like when you're planning stuff or making sentences in your head.
Instead of thinking it in my own language first, I just think it in English now.
Exactly. It means you're so comfortable with it. It's becoming natural.
This is awesome. I'm already seeing these signs in myself. What else does the article talk about?
Well, we can't forget about idioms and slang. Right?
Oh, I love a good idiom. They're so fun.
And the article says understanding and using them shows you really get the nuances of English. It's not just the words, it's the culture and the meaning behind them.
Yeah, like break the ice doesn't mean literally breaking ice. It means making things more relaxed, starting the conversation.
Exactly. And being able to not just understand, but USE those idioms. Shows you're going way beyond basic stuff. It's like a deeper level.
Okay, so we got understanding the situation, thinking in English, and using idioms and slang. 3 hidden signs already. What's next?
Let's get into how we actually talk in English. This might surprise you. The article says not overthinking your answers and even using filler words can actually be signs of fluency.
Wait, what? I thought filler words were bad, and like...
It's totally natural, especially for native speakers. Think about it. When you chat with a friend, do you plan every word before you say it?
No way. It's all about the flow.
Right. So if you can answer naturally without overthinking it, and maybe throw in some ums and likes, it could mean you're comfortable, like a native speaker.
That's such a relief. I always feel bad when I use those words, but maybe it's not that big of a deal.
Maybe not. But of course, it's all about balance. They should help your flow, not hurt it.
Right. That makes sense. What else about conversations does the article talk about?
This is interesting. It gets into humor and abstract topics. Those can be hard, even for people who are pretty fluent.
Oh yeah, I remember struggling with English humor. I never got the jokes.
Well, think about it. Humor isn't just the words. It's the culture, the tone, all these little things. So understanding it means you're fluent on a deeper level.
And what about abstract topics, like philosophy and stuff?
The article says being able to talk about those big ideas means you have really good skills. It's not just describing things.
Yeah.
It's expressing complex thoughts.
That makes sense. When you're talking about something abstract, you have to be more careful with your words.
Exactly. And you know what? They even have a joke example in the article.
Oh, a joke. I love jokes. Tell me.
Why don't skeletons fight each other? They don't have the guts.
I get it. Skeletons don't have guts, so they can't fight. It's funny because guts means courage, too.
Exactly. You understood the joke perfectly, which means you're getting those subtle things. It's not just knowing the words, it's understanding how they're used in a funny way.
Wow, I'm seeing fluency in a whole new light. We talked about context thinking in English. Idioms, slang filler, words, humor, abstract topics. So much already. What else is there?
There's more. The article talks about writing, understanding different accents, and most importantly, having the confidence to just go for it. But I think that's a lot for now. Maybe we let it all sink in and come back for the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. This is giving me so much to think about. Can't wait for the next part. Okay, we're back and ready for more hidden fluency. My mind is still blown from all those signs we talked about.
Yeah, there's a lot more. We're going through this article. 14 signs you're more fluent in English than you think. And we've got some really cool stuff to cover still.
Hit me with it. What else is there?
Well, we were talking about communication, right? Like those moments when things get tricky.
You mean like when you're trying to explain something and the other person just doesn't get it?
Exactly. The article says even those situations can show how fluent you are. If you can handle misunderstandings without freaking out, that's a good sign.
So it's not just about speaking perfectly. It's about knowing how to fix things when you need to.
Yeah. They say it's about being able to rephrase things, explain it differently, maybe use simpler words if they're not understanding you. It's all about keeping the conversation going.
That's true. I used to get so nervous when I had to explain myself. But I've gotten better at it over time. Maybe that's a fluency thing too.
It probably is. The more fluent you are, the more confident you feel, even when things don't go perfectly.
So handling misunderstandings, that's a sign of fluency. Interesting. What else is there about communication?
The article talks about changing your tone depending on who you're talking to.
Oh, yeah. You wouldn't talk to your boss the same way you talk to your friend.
Exactly. Being able to change your tone, how you say things, your words, that shows you really get how to communicate in different situations.
It's like reading the room and knowing how to act right.
Yeah. It's being socially smart with the language. Yeah. They even give examples in the article, like how you would greet a friend versus how you would start a work meeting.
It's crazy how those little things make such a difference. Okay, so far we've got understanding the situation, thinking in English, idioms, slang, talking naturally with those filler words, understanding humor, abstract topics, handling misunderstandings, A&D, changing our tone. Did I miss anything?
Wow, you got it all. We're making good progress through these 14 signs, but we're not done yet. The article also talks about writing in English, understanding different accents, and the most important thing, having the confidence to just use your English.
Okay, let's talk writing. I think a lot of people get more nervous about writing than speaking. It feels so much more serious.
I get it. Writing is different. But the article says if you can write emails or messages naturally, without checking every grammar rule, that's actually a big deal.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about expressing yourself clearly.
Exactly. They give this example of a casual email to a coworker. Hi, Sarah. Just following up on the report. Let me know if you need anything else. Single to the point, gets the job done.
I like that. It's not about trying to sound super fancy. It's about using writing to communicate.
Right. Which brings us to understanding different accents. That can be tough.
Oh, yeah. When I first started watching British TV shows, I needed subtitles to understand anything.
That happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But being able to understand different accents, whether it's British, American, Australian, whatever, it shows you have really good listening skills.
So it's not just about speaking, it's about understanding all the different ways people say it.
Yeah. It's a super useful skill, especially these days when we talk to people from all over the world. The article even talks about watching shows like Sherlock with those British accents, or Friends with the American accents, and being able to understand them without a problem.
You know what? Now that you mention it, I can watch those shows without subtitles now. Maybe I am more fluent than I thought.
That's awesome. Sounds like you're improving without even realizing it.
And that brings us to the last sign we'll talk about today, confidence. This one's really important.
Well, definitely. I think a lot of people are scared to speak English because they don't feel confident. That's why this article is so good. It says fluency isn't about being perfect. It's about being comfortable enough to use your English, even if you make mistakes sometimes.
That makes me feel better. It's okay to mess up a little as long as you're communicating right.
Right. They have this example of someone correcting themselves while they're talking. Like, yesterday I go to the park. I just went to the park.
Yeah.
The point is they fixed the mistake and kept going.
It's like, it's okay to be human. We're not robots. Fluency is about connecting with people.
Exactly. It's about using English to build relationships, share ideas, and experience the world.
This whole conversation has been so eye-opening, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface.
There's definitely more to talk about. But I think it's good to let all this sink in for a bit. And then we can come back for the last part of our deep dive and wrap it all up.
That sounds like a plan. I can't wait to see what else we uncover. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into hidden fluency.
It's amazing how much we learn about how we use English, isn't it?
I know. It's like we've been fluent all along, but we didn't even realize it. So now what? What do we do with all this new information?
Well, that's where the last part of this article gets really interesting. It's not just about knowing the signs. It's about how we think about our fluency, like shifting our mindset from what we're bad at to what we're good at.
I like that. So what kind of advice do they give?
First, they say to just think about your journey with English. Like, where did you start and how far have you come? All those milestones.
Yeah, it's so easy to forget about all the progress we've made. We're always focused on what's next.
I know. But celebrating those wins, even the small ones, can really help us keep going. The article also says to look for chances to use English in real life, like talking to friends, watching movies, reading stuff, and notice how much you need help.
So it's about putting ourselves out there and just using the language.
Exactly. The more you do it, the more you'll realize you can actually do it. You can talk to people, understand things, express yourself. It's about focusing on what you can do.
I love that. It takes the pressure off of being perfect.
Right. And even celebrating those little wins is important. Like, if you understood a movie without subtitles, or explained something complicated in English, or had a good conversation with a native speaker, those are all wins.
It's like giving ourselves credit for how much we've learned.
Yeah. And this next one is super important. Don't compare yourself to others.
Oh, that's so hard, though. It's easy to look at other people and feel bad.
I know it's tempting. But everyone learns differently. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. The article says to focus on your journey and your goals.
That's good advice. It's like we're all running our own race.
Exactly. And fluency isn't about reaching some finish line. It's about using English to connect with people, share your thoughts, and see the world.
This whole deep dive has been so cool. I feel like I understand fluency in a totally new way.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
And that's the message I want you to take away. Fluency is a journey. It's about always learning and growing, but it's also about appreciating how far you've come already.
I like that. Before we finish, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Good idea. Yeah. How about this? What's one thing about your English fluency that you want to work on?
That's a great question. It makes people think about what they're good at and what they want to improve.
Yeah. And there's no right or wrong answer. Maybe it's idioms or feeling more confident or understanding different accents. It's all about choosing your own path.
So true. Well, that's it for our deep dive into hidden fluency. Thanks for joining us. We hope you learned something new about your own English skills.
And remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination. Keep practicing and keep celebrating your wins.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive. All right, so tonight we're going to be diving into a case. The missing necklace at the Grand Hotel.
Ooh, a classic.
Yeah. So picture this, the Diamond Gala. A night of, just total extravagance, elegance at the luxurious Grand Hotel.
Fancy.
But amidst the, all the beautiful gowns and the dazzling jewels, there's a chilling discovery.
Uh-oh. What happened?
Lady Eleanor's priceless diamond necklace has vanished.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so we're going to be breaking this whole case down together, just like a team of detectives.
Love that. And you know what's so interesting about this case in particular is the setup. It's that classic locked room mystery.
Ooh, I love those.
Yeah, so the theft, it appears to have happened in this secure location, seemingly impossible to breach,
Right.
It's like a puzzle box,
Yeah.
It just begs us to examine every single detail, every motive.
Absolutely. And the best part is you get to be our partner in solving this crime.
Yes.
We're going to walk you through all the evidence, introduce you to the suspects, reveal their alibis. So fun.
Think of it as your own personal detective training.
Yes.
All from, the comfort of wherever you're listening.
Exactly. And, even though this is, obviously a fictional mystery, the techniques that we're going to use to unravel it, they can actually sharpen your real-world critical thinking skills.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be looking for clues, questioning motives, analyzing alibis, just like a real detective would.
Yeah, it's like a workout for your brain.
Totally.
So let's set the stage a little bit. So it's the Diamond Gala at the Grand Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said, just dripping with opulence secrets. Among the esteemed guests is Lady Eleanor, known for her, exquisite jewelry collection.
She's got great taste.
Oh yeah, top notch. So tonight she's showcasing a diamond necklace of incredible value, historical significance. This thing is a big deal.
It's a big deal, yeah. And that detail right there, that is crucial because it instantly establishes motive, the sheer worth of this necklace, it just makes it this irresistible target for any thief. Yeah, everyone's looking at it.
Exactly.
So now this is where our three main suspects kind of come into play. Each of them was near Lady Eleanor's room on that fateful night. We've got Sarah, the maid.
Okay.
Mr. Collins, a guest at the hotel.
Okay.
And the kind of ever so composed Mr. Thomas, the butler.
Oh, the butler.
Yeah. So now each of these suspects, they have an alibi, at least initially.
Right.
So let's start with Sarah, the maid. Her statement, very short, to the point, I didn't go inside the room. I only cleaned the hallway and left.
It sounds kind of rehearsed,
Yep.
She's trying to distance herself. What do you think?
Yeah, it's almost a little too perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
She's trying a little too hard.
Yeah.
And then there's Mr. Collins, the guest. His alibi is very specific. He says, I was in my room the whole time working on my laptop.
Oh, interesting. See, that feels a bit over-explained to me.
Mm-hmm.
Just why is he going above and beyond to create this solid alibi?
He's trying to be very memorable, this is what I was doing.
Exactly.
So, and finally, we have Mr. Thomas, the butler. He states, I was only delivering drinks to the other guests. I had no reason to enter her room.
Ooh, interesting. See, he's emphasizing his duties, lack of motive.
Yeah.
Playing that role of the dutiful, invisible servant.
Yeah, just doing his job.
Exactly.
But remember, these are just their initial statements, the real work. It begins with examining the physical evidence, those silent witnesses that can tell a completely different story.
Oh, I love that. The silent witnesses. So good.
They don't lie. So that brings us to the clues uncovered by our fictional investigator, Detective Jones.
Okay.
The first clue, the jewelry box was locked, but the lock, it had been forced open.
Okay, so that immediately tells us that the thief likely didn't have a key.
Right.
And that narrows down our suspect list considerably, doesn't it?
It does. So who do you think, based on this clue alone, we can rule out? Take a moment to consider the suspects, and their potential access to a key. Now, the second clue Detective Jones finds is a muddy footprint on the carpet near the balcony door.
What? Ooh.
What do you make of that?
Okay, well, that raises a fascinating possibility. Could the thief have entered from outside, using the balcony?
Interesting.
This throws a wrench into that whole locked room, aspect.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests maybe a more daring, elaborate heist.
It's getting exciting.
It is.
And finally, the third clue, a tiny scrap of red fabric snagged on the edge of the window.
Ooh, what?
Could this be from the thief's clothing?
That's the question, right? It's such a seemingly insignificant detail, but it could be crucial,
Right.
If we can figure out where that came from, it could link us directly to the culprit.
Absolutely. So, all right. So we've laid out the initial facts of the case. We've got our three suspects, each with their own alibi, and three pretty intriguing clues: a forced lock, a muddy footprint, and a, mysterious scrap of red fabric. So what are your initial thoughts? Do any of the suspect stories seem a little less convincing now?
So we've got our clues, right? We've got our suspects. What happens next? What does Detective Jones do with all this information?
Well, he does. Like any good detective, he doesn't just jump to conclusions.
Right.
He uses these clues to kind of guide his next round of questioning.
Yeah.
Carefully observing, the suspect's reactions, looking for those telltale signs of guilt, deception,
So it's not just the words they're saying, but like how they say them.
Exactly.
Their body language, their tone of voice, like all that can be just as revealing as any physical evidence.
Precisely. And this is where things like really get fascinating, know? So remember Sarah, the maid, who gave that quick, almost rehearsed denial?
So when she's questioned further, about the balcony, that muddy footprint, she becomes increasingly flustered, just vehemently denying ever being, near that area.
That's interesting. It seems like the more Detective Jones presses her, the more defensive she gets.
Right.
Almost like she's trying way too hard to prove that she's innocent.
Exactly. And then you have Mr. Collins, the guest, who, claimed to be engrossed in work.
Right.
When he's confronted with these clues, he becomes visibly agitated, like his carefully constructed alibi it's just crumbling, like under pressure.
Oh, wow.
He insists, he heard nothing unusual that night. But I don't know, there's something about his nervousness, like it just betrays a very different story, you know what I mean?
It's like he's trying to keep up this facade of calm, but underneath it all, you can just, sense the panic, the fear that maybe he's going to get caught.
Yeah, exactly.
So then there's Mr. Thomas, the butler. He, throughout this whole investigation, remains remarkably composed, almost, like aloof. He even offers an explanation for that red fabric, pointing out that his uniform could be a potential source.
Wow. That's pretty clever, He's not denying the possibility, but he's like offering this plausible explanation.
Yeah.
Deflecting suspicion without directly like contradicting the evidence.
It's subtle but very effective.
It is. It plays perfectly into his role.
Yeah.
As that seemingly insignificant butler, like blending into the background, observing everything, but rarely drawing attention to himself.
Yeah, just kind of part of the furniture almost.
Exactly.
So let's pause here for a moment. Let's analyze, these reactions with the clues that we have. So we've got Sarah, whose denials are becoming more and more frantic. We've got Mr. Collins, whose nervousness is, you can practically like feel it.
I know, right.
And then there's Mr. Thomas, who, he just seems almost too calm, too prepared.
Right.
So if you were Detective Jones, what would stand out to you the most? Which reaction would pique your interest?
That's the question.
And remember, even the absence of a reaction, that can be a reaction in itself.
Ooh, that's deep. I like that.
This is where those detective skills come in handy. Reading between the lines, observing those subtle cues, piecing the puzzle together. And sometimes those most unassuming details can have like the greatest significance. Like that muddy footprint, for instance.
Yeah, that footprint's particularly intriguing, right?
Yeah.
Because it directly contradicts that locked room element.
Yeah.
Like, it suggests that maybe the thief bypassed all those traditional entry points and used, a more unconventional route, like the balcony.
And if we think about who might have access to the balcony, the list of suspects gets a lot smaller.
Exactly. It's all about, connecting the dots, weaving together the physical evidence with their statements, their reactions. It's like creating this tapestry.
Yeah.
With each thread representing a piece of the puzzle.
I love that analogy. And as Detective Jones meticulously gathers those threads, like a clear picture starts to emerge. And that picture points to a suspect who, might have been hiding in plain sight all along. Okay, so we've analyzed all the clues, we dissected the alibis, scrutinized everybody's reactions. So now, for the moment of truth, who does Detective Jones actually accuse?
Well, after carefully considering everything, all the evidence, Detective Jones, he makes this kind of surprising accusation.
Okay.
He points the finger, not at the nervous guest or the flustered maid, but at Mr. Thomas.
Wow, the butler.
The seemingly unflappable Mr. Thomas, the butler.
I gotta admit, even I did not see that coming.
Really?
Yeah, I was so focused on like those more obvious signs of guilt, I completely overlooked just like the quiet, calculated demeanor of Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, that's exactly what makes this case so compelling. It reminds us that appearances can be deceiving and that the most unassuming person, can sometimes be the mastermind behind it all.
So how does Mr. Thomas react when he's accused? Does he maintain his innocence, or does he finally crack under pressure?
Surprisingly, Mr. Thomas, he confesses.
Wow, really?
He admits to meticulously planning and executing this whole theft, using his knowledge of the hotel, his position, everything to his advantage. He even reveals how he staged the scene to make it look like an outside job, planting that muddy footprint to mislead the investigation.
So that red fabric, it really was from his uniform.
It was. He was so clever in the way that he, offered that explanation. It was almost like he was daring Detective Jones to suspect him.
Yeah, like a challenge almost.
Exactly. He was playing on that classic butler did it trope, knowing that they often dismiss the butler as just a background character.
It's got him there, yeah.
But in this case, the seemingly insignificant butler was actually the criminal mastermind.
This case really highlights just how important it is to challenge our assumptions. To look beyond just the obvious. I mean, who would have thought that the calmest, most collected person in the room would be the guilty one?
It's such a valuable lesson, not just in solving mysteries, but in everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a time when you made a judgment based on first impressions or preconceived notions. Did you consider everything? Did you look at all the angles, or did you jump to conclusions?
Yeah, it makes you realize how easily we can be swayed by our own biases, how important it is to just take a step back, really analyze the situation objectively and consider all the possibilities.
Exactly. Just like Detective Jones, we need to be curious, observant, and willing to question, even our initial instincts. Sometimes the truth is hidden in plain sight, but it takes a discerning eye to see it.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the missing necklace at the Grand Hotel, let's just take a moment to reflect on the lessons we've learned about critical thinking, observation, the dangers of assumptions.
Yeah, I mean, the world is full of mysteries, big and small. And by honing our detective skills, we can become more discerning thinkers, more perceptive observers, and just overall more confident in our decisions.
So the next time you're faced with a puzzling situation, channel your inner Detective Jones. Ask questions, examine the evidence, and don't be afraid to challenge the obvious. You might be surprised by what you discover.
All right, so today we're diving deep into the life and career of Alain Delon.
Ooh, exciting.
For an actor who is so famous for his looks, there's a surprising amount of depth to this guy.
Yeah, and drama. I mean, his life story could be a movie itself.
Right. I mean, you requested this deep dive, so I know you're into classic film.
Huge fan.
And Delon is French cinema royalty.
Totally.
But as we'll see, there's so much more to him than just a pretty face.
Oh, absolutely. What fascinates me about Delon is that even though he's remembered for his looks, his life was full of these dramatic twists and turns, and it all started with a childhood that was anything but glamorous.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back. Turbulent beginnings, right?
Yes.
How did his early years shape the man he became?
Well, picture this. Little Alain, born in 1935.
Okay.
Parents divorced when he's just 4 years old.
Wow.
Shuffled between foster families, different schools, no stability.
So he was dealing with a lot at a young age.
Yeah. And you can see echoes of this kind of chaotic upbringing in the characters he plays later on.
Yeah.
Often emotionally guarded, withdrawn. It's like that early instability just infused this intensity into his acting.
That's interesting. It's not always clear how an actor's personal life affects their work. But in Delon's case, it seems like those early experiences really did shape his persona.
Absolutely.
But before he's even on a film set, there's another formative experience.
Right.
The French Navy and the First Indochina War.
Right.
And knowing how much you love his Purple Noon, his breakthrough role.
The one that launched him, right?
Which really did.
Yeah, Purple Noon. Adaptation of Patricia Highsmith's novel, The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Oh, I love that book.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's this captivating story, deceit, moral ambiguity, chilling charisma. And Delon, he just embodies Tom Ripley.
Really becomes him.
He becomes him, yeah, and with this unsettling charm that you can't take your eyes off of.
I've heard some critics say that Delon was just playing himself in Purple Noon. like typecast, you know?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, Delon's natural charisma is definitely there.
Yeah.
But I think he brings a depth to Ripley that goes beyond just charm. He captures that manipulative nature, the darkness underneath, and it creates this truly multi-layered performance.
So it's more than just surface level.
Way more.
And the film was a huge success, critically and commercially, and it launched Delon to the forefront of European cinema.
Totally.
Then just a few years later, 1963, he cements his place as a legend with The Leopard.
The Leopard. Okay, this is an epic historical drama.
Huge film.
Lucio Visconti directing, Delon acting alongside giants, Burt Lancaster, Claudia Cardinale.
I mean, you've probably seen clips. It's visually stunning.
Beautiful. And Delon, breathtaking performance.
I've heard it said that The Leopard made him synonymous with French cinema. Would you agree?
Definitely. I mean, it catapulted him to international fame, made him one of the most sought-after actors of his generation. But you know what?
What?
Delon was far from a one-trick pony.
Right. Let's get into that. He was known for his range.
His range was remarkable.
So let's dive into some of those roles that show off his versatility. He wasn't afraid to tackle different genres, was he?
No, not at all. Let's start with Rocco and His Brothers, also came out in 1960.
Oh, wow. Same year as Purple Noon.
Powerful drama, family, loyalty, tragedy, all set against post-war Italy. Imagine yourself transported to that time, that place, the grit, the desperation. You can almost feel it. And Delon's performance as Rocco, the moral center of the family, is just raw and moving.
It sounds intense.
It stays with you long after the credits roll.
Then Le Samurai in 1967, directed by Jean-Pierre Melville.
Oh, yes.
Master of French noir. And this film, it's just iconic. What makes his portrayal of the hitman so compelling?
He plays Jeff Costello, this solitary, almost mythical hitman, and he does it with this cool precision, economy of movement that's just mesmerizing, but there's this underlying vulnerability too.
Like hidden depths.
Exactly, and it's that duality, that complexity that makes his characters so fascinating.
Okay, and we can't forget La Piscine, 1969, a really sensual psychological drama where he stars alongside Romy Schneider. And, you know, you can't talk about this film without mentioning their real-life romance.
Oh, right. That chemistry, electric.
It must have just added fuel to the fire of their public image.
Totally. The film itself is a classic, and it showcases another side of Delon's talent.
Really shows his range.
Absolutely a must-see for any Delon fan.
And that same year, he's in The Sicilian Clan. I mean, this really shows he can do action, crime thrillers, and bring that same intensity he had in his dramatic roles.
Oh, he nails it.
Yeah.
He's totally believable as Roger Sarté, this cunning, ruthless criminal. And it reminds us that Delon wasn't afraid to explore, to push those boundaries. He could be charming, dangerous, vulnerable, you name it.
He really ran the gamut.
He did.
Yeah.
But, you know, he wasn't just interested in these darker roles. He was drawn to complex characters, the morally ambiguous ones.
Right.
And that led him to Mr. Klein in 1976, a haunting tale set in Nazi-occupied France.
Okay, Mr. Klein. This is a masterpiece.
It really is. It stays with you. Delon plays Robert Klein, a man caught in this web of mistaken identity during a truly horrific period in history.
John.
And his performance, it captures that growing fear, the desperation. He's trying to prove his innocence.
It's a really powerful story.
Oh, and it earned him a Caesar Award for Best Actor. Well-deserved.
So clearly Alain Delon was way more than just a pretty face.
Oh,
he was a dedicated artist who really crafted his roles with incredible depth.
Absolutely. And his life off-screen, just as compelling. Filled with these passionate romances and this drive to build a legacy beyond acting.
Okay, this is really interesting.
It's fascinating. I think you'll really enjoy this next part.
All right, we've covered a lot. Why don't we take a moment to absorb all that, and when we come back, we'll explore the man behind the mask, his personal life, his ventures beyond the world of cinema.
I can't wait.
Okay, so we've talked about Delon's rough childhood, his incredible rise to fame, and how versatile he was as an actor. But there's another piece to this puzzle, right? His personal life. You know, I think you'll find this really interesting, especially with your interest in, like, the human side of these larger-than-life figures.
It's definitely as dramatic as any of his movies. I mean, his romances were legendary, especially with Romy Schneider.
Oh, Romy Schneider, what a story.
Right. It totally captivated the public, intense passion, but also, you know, heartbreak in the end. It's like a movie in itself. And I bet their on-screen chemistry, like in La Piscine, just added to the public fascination with their real-life relationship.
Oh, for sure. I mean, It was a whirlwind, exhilarating highs and crushing lows. It's interesting, right, how often that kind of intense passion goes hand in hand with creative people.
Yeah, and even though it ended, their relationship definitely left a mark on both of them.
No doubt.
And later, Delon married Natalie Delon, and they had a son, Anthony.
Right. Another layer of intrigue in his already, fascinating personal life. They were this glamorous couple, but even that ended in divorce. Yeah. It really makes you think about how tough it is to keep relationships going under the spotlight, all that pressure.
Always being watched. But here's what I find interesting. Despite all the ups and downs in his relationships, Delon always talked about how important family was to him.
Yeah.
It almost seems like a contradiction, right? Because his public image was always this lone wolf. It is. It's fascinating, right? He called himself a lone wolf, but family was like this anchor for him. He had 4 kids total, and even with the inevitable ups and downs, he stayed close with them. It shows a depth, a commitment to family that you might not expect.
So we've got this picture, right? Difficult childhood, rise to stardom, diverse roles, complex personal life.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this other side to Alain Delon that often gets missed. His business sense. This might surprise you, but he wasn't just an artist. He was a pretty savvy entrepreneur.
Yeah. Delon understood the power of his image, and he built the successful brand. Perfumes, watches, accessories. He had this impeccable taste, and he turned it into a real empire.
Like he created a brand out of his own style. Do you think that surprised people?
Maybe those who only knew him from his movies? It speaks to another side of him. Ambition, creativity, and this desire to build something that would last, something beyond acting. He wasn't content to just be a face on screen. He wanted to create.
And speaking of legacy, he did rack up quite a few awards, didn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He won a César Award, which is basically the French Oscar, Best Actor for Mr. Klein. And then in 2019, he got the Palme d'Honneur at Cannes,
wow,
which is a Lifetime Achievement Award, recognizing his huge contributions to cinema. It's one of the biggest honors in film, It's not just about one performance, it's about a whole career devoted to acting.
That's amazing. From a troubled kid to an international icon, recognized for his art and his business smarts. But he didn't totally disappear after getting those awards, did he?
No, he kind of gradually retired from acting, fewer films after the 90s, but his impact is undeniable. He's a legend. His performances, that look in his eyes, his effortless style, they still inspire people today. And he's been pretty open about aging, about death, about the wisdom that comes with living a full life. It gives you a glimpse into the man behind the image, someone who experienced incredible success, but also personal struggles.
It sounds like he always kept people's attention. Mm-hmm. Earlier you mentioned how he often talked about feeling lonely. I think that's a really interesting thread to pull on, especially when you think about the psychology of fame, which I know you're interested in.
Definitely. I mean, here's a guy who had it all: fame, success, wealth. But he often talked about this deep sense of solitude. It's like the thing he was seeking, the recognition, somehow led to this feeling of being alone, even surrounded by fans.
Yeah, it's strange, right? Like wanting fame, wanting to be validated by others could actually lead to more loneliness. Mm-hmm. It makes you wonder about the real price of fame, what you have to give up to get it. Do you think this feeling of being alone was just part of who Delon was? Or did it come from the life he chose, the path he took?
That's a tough one. It could be a little of both, right? His childhood, the instability, not having those strong relationships early on, maybe that contributed to a sense of detachment. And then being an actor, always in the public eye, that can create a distance between the person and the image. Always being watched, having to maintain this persona, it can make it hard to really connect with people.
Okay, so we've explored so much of Alain Delon's life, his career, the highs and lows, the good and the bad. But there's this big question that always seems to come up. And it's a question that Delon himself struggled with.
Oh, totally.
What does it all mean?
Right. It's that thing, when you look at someone who's achieved so much fame, success, and you wonder,
like, what's the point of it all?
Yeah. And for Delon, even with all the adoration, the wealth, he often talked about feeling alone.
It's almost a paradox, right?
It is.
Like chasing fame and validation could lead to feeling more isolated.
Exactly.
It really makes you think about what you have to sacrifice for that kind of recognition.
Yeah, the cost of it all.
Do you think this loneliness was just part of Delon's personality? Or was it a consequence of, the life he lived?
It's a great question. Maybe both. I mean, think about his childhood.
Right. So rough.
So unstable, not having those strong, loving relationships early on. It could have made it hard for him to really connect with people.
And then being an actor,
right.
It's all about image. You can put up a wall between the real person
yeah.
and the public persona.
Totally. Constantly being watched, having to be on all the time. It makes it tough to just be yourself.
So even with all the success, the talent, there can still be this inner turmoil.
Absolutely.
This search for something more.
It makes those bigger-than-life figures more relatable, you know?
You start to see them as human beings, not just icons.
Yeah, they have struggles too.
Do you think when Dylan talked about this feeling of loneliness, did it resonate with his audience?
Oh, I think so. It made him vulnerable, you know?
Yeah.
Like under that cool, handsome exterior, there was this fragility.
It makes him more real.
Exactly. It makes him more human, but it also kind of adds to the mystery.
Right. It's complex.
And I think it resonated because we all want to connect with others, to find meaning.
It's a universal thing.
We all want something that goes beyond the fleeting nature of fame, you know?
It brings us back to why we're having this conversation in the first place.
Right.
It's not just about the movies or the awards. It's about understanding who Alain Delon really was.
The man behind the image.
The complexities, the search for meaning.
Yeah.
As we wrap this up, what do you think his legacy is? What will he be remembered for?
He'll be remembered for those incredible performances.
Oh, absolutely.
In those iconic films, but also, I think for his honesty, for talking about the downsides of fame, that loneliness.
It's not something people usually talk about.
He didn't shy away from it. He showed us a glimpse of what it's really like, and I think that's powerful.
It reminds us that success doesn't solve everything.
Right.
That even those who seem to have it all still struggle.
We're all human. We all have those moments.
I hope this deep dive gave you a deeper appreciation for Alain Delon.
Me too.
Not just as an actor, but as a person, as a man who lived a really full, really complex life.
I think he was a true cinematic icon, but more than that, he was a human being who was honest about his experiences, about the good and the bad.
That's a great way to put it. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of Alain Delon.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating deep dive.
All right, so are you ready to dive into this list of 99 words? It's supposed to be like the most useful words for daily conversation.
Yeah, it's kind of a fascinating idea.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's like, you know, this linguistic survival kit, like if you only had 99 words to work with, you know,
right.
Could you actually communicate?
It's like the bare minimum of language.
It is. And what's really interesting to me is like, you know, thinking about this list as a way to understand how humans make meaning, you know,
Oh, yeah.
with just, you know, the fewest possible pieces.
Like a linguistic Lego set.
Exactly. It's like reverse engineering language, you know?
But it is.
We're starting with like this simplified model.
Right.
And using it to understand this complex system.
Exactly.
So cool. Before we like, you know, break down all the categories and like go word by word.
Sure.
Let's just take a second to appreciate like how much you can actually say with only 99 words.
Yeah, that is amazing.
I mean, think about it. You can talk about what you did today, how you're feeling, even like make plans for the future, all with just this tiny little vocabulary.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start unpacking these categories.
Okay.
The first one is greetings.
Right.
And I immediately was like, why include both hello and hi?
Yeah. Why both?
It seems like such a subtle distinction for such a small vocabulary.
Right.
What do you think?
Well, I think that subtle difference actually speaks volumes about like formality in language.
Oh, interesting.
You know, hello is generally considered more formal. Hi is a more casual. It's a really simple choice, but it can kind of signal a lot about the relationship between speakers.
Yeah, it's like choosing your weapon linguistically speaking.
That's a good way to put it.
You know, you don't want to use the wrong level of formality in the wrong situation.
Exactly.
So even in the stripped down vocabulary, it seems like social nuance is still really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's move on to actions.
Okay.
And right away, I'm intrigued by make and do.
Oh, yeah.
These seem super basic, but like, I feel like there's so much hidden complexity there.
Well, they're like the Swiss Army knives of language.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's a clue to how language evolves.
Right.
You start with these really broad verbs like make and do.
Uh-huh.
But then as societies get more complex, you need more precise words.
Right.
But we still hang on to those multi-purpose verbs because they're just so useful.
It's like they're carrying the weight of all those more specific verbs within them.
Exactly.
You know, instead of saying construct or manufacture, we can just say make.
Right.
Okay, moving on to descriptions.
Right.
This is where I got really interested.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of words for emotions on this list. Happy, sad, tired, hungry, thirsty.
Mm-hmm.
Why prioritize feelings so much?
Well, think about it. Being able to communicate basic needs like hunger and thirst. you know? Those are essential for survival.
Yeah.
And emotions like happiness or sadness, they're really powerful signals.
Yeah.
They can influence how other people interact with you.
Right.
So in a way, they're just as important as actions or objects when you're trying to get your point across.
It's not just about conveying information.
Right.
It's about expressing your internal state.
Exactly.
Which can be super crucial for navigating social situations.
Definitely.
All right, next up we have time and frequency.
Hey.
And what I find fascinating about this category is how it highlights like the human struggle to understand something that is actually really abstract. Time.
It's true. Time is a weird one.
Yeah.
It's like these basic time concepts aren't as straightforward as they seem.
I know.
You know, we humans, we perceive and organize time in a way that's like unique in the animal kingdom.
Right.
We use language to create a framework for understanding something that's inherently intangible.
And here, with just a handful of words, always, sometimes, never, we have a whole system for expressing like complex ideas about, you know, when things happen, how often they happen.
Right.
It's like building a whole universe of time with just a few linguistic Legos.
Yes, that analogy.
Right.
It really is. It's a testament to the power of language to make sense of the world around us.
Totally. And it highlights how even seemingly simple words can carry a lot of weight.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, let's move on to the category of places.
Okay.
What immediately jumped out at me here is the word workplace.
Okay.
But there aren't any specific jobs listed.
Right.
And it made me think, is this a reflection of how work is viewed in modern society?
That's a really interesting observation. I mean, workplace is a much more generalized space than, say, farm or factory.
Yeah.
This could indicate like a shift towards a world where work happens in a variety of settings.
Okay.
And, of course, language adapts to reflect these societal changes.
So this seemingly simple word choice might actually be a clue about the intended audience for this list.
Interesting.
Someone navigating a more, you know, modern, fluid work environment.
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I'm really curious to dig into what's missing from this list, because it's often the omissions that are the most revealing, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. What's left AUT of a language can tell us just as much as what's included. Sometimes that's where the real story is.
It's like looking at the negative space in a painting, right?
Yeah, sometimes that's where the real story is.
Okay, so the first thing that jumps out at me is the lack of slang or informal language.
Okay.
This list is very proper and polite. Why do you think they made that choice?
That's a good question.
It seems like it would make it harder to like really connect with native speakers, you know?
Well, I think slang is so hyper-specific to a time and place. This list seems to be aiming for like a timeless, almost international version of English.
Okay.
Something that would be understood across cultures.
Right.
And wouldn't sound dated in a few years.
So it's like they're going for the most universally applicable version of English.
Right.
Even if it means sacrificing some of the, you know, richness and nuance of everyday speech.
Exactly.
It's interesting to think about the trade-offs, right? You gain clarity and broad understanding, but you lose some of the color and personality that slang can bring.
For sure. And it raises an interesting question about the purpose of language itself.
Oh, yeah.
Is it primarily about conveying information clearly and efficiently?
Right.
Or is it also about expressing identity,
Yeah.
building relationships,
Right.
playing with the creative possibilities of words?
All right. So we've talked about the missing slang,
Right.
but there's another omission that really struck me. The lack of abstract concepts.
Okay.
We've got love and hate, which seem pretty fundamental, but that's about it.
It's true.
Why do you think that is?
It seems like this list prioritizes concrete needs
Okay.
and immediate experiences over more complex or nuanced ideas.
I see.
I mean, if you're focused on basic survival and communication,
Right.
you probably don't need to be like debating the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess when you're trying to build a language from scratch, you have to start with the essentials.
The bare minimum.
The things you need to physically survive and navigate the world around you.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to some of the categories that are included.
Right.
And questions feels like the most essential of all, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, questions are how we learn, how we explore, how we connect with others on a deeper level.
Couldn't agree more.
They're fundamental to the human experience.
For sure.
And look at the words they've chosen. What, where, when, why, how.
The classic 5 W's.
It's like they're targeting the most fundamental aspects of our experience, like the nature of things. their location, their timing, their causes, and their methods.
Yeah, it's like the building blocks of curiosity.
Right.
Those 5 Ws, those are practically universal across languages.
Wow.
That tells us something about the fundamental ways that humans seek to understand the world.
It's like we're hardwired for curiosity. We need to know the who, what, where, when, and why of everything.
We do.
Okay, let's move on to connectors. These are the words that link ideas together, right?
Right, like the glue that holds language together.
And the ones they've chosen, and but or because. So they're like the basic building blocks of logic and reasoning.
Absolutely. They allow us to create more complex sentences.
Right?
To show cause and effect. Contrast ideas.
Yeah.
Offer alternatives.
It's amazing how much nuance you can add with just a handful of words.
It really is.
Okay, so then we come to the miscellaneous category.
Right.
This one feels a bit like a catch-all.
It does. A little bit of everything.
But like they're acknowledging that even in a simplified vocabulary, we still need ways to talk about the things that matter most to us.
Right.
Our relationships, our values, our place in the world.
Yeah, we've got thing which is about as general as it gets.
Right.
But then you've got life, world, friend, family.
Interesting how they grouped those concepts together.
It is. It suggests an awareness of the interconnectedness of our experiences.
Right.
Even in a very basic vocabulary.
And then, of course, there's words like money car house.
Yeah.
I can't help but wonder if that reflects a certain emphasis on material possessions.
Perhaps. Or maybe just the practical realities of daily life in many cultures.
True.
But it also speaks to the need for language to evolve alongside our technological advancements.
Okay.
As we create new things, we need new words to describe them.
So I think we've done a pretty thorough job unpacking this list.
I think so.
We've talked about the choices they made, the words they included, the ones they left out. It's really given us a fascinating glimpse into the essential elements of communication, hasn't it?
I think so. It has been a really enriching exploration.
It has.
And I think what's most striking is how this seemingly simple list of 99 words has sparked so many big questions.
Yeah, it really makes you realize that language is so much more than just like a set of words.
It is.
It's
a living, breathing system that's constantly evolving.
It really is.
And reflecting the world around us.
Okay, so we've gone like deep into the nitty-gritty of this list. We've analyzed categories, debated word choices, pondered the missing pieces. But what does it all mean for you, the listener? What can you take away from this deep dive?
I hope it's given you a new appreciation for the power of language.
Right.
Even with just 99 words, you can express a surprising range of thoughts, feelings, experiences.
Yeah.
It's kind of a reminder that sometimes simplicity can be a strength.
And it makes you think, like, what if you were building your own list of essential words? What would it look like?
What words would you choose?
What would those choices say about you?
That's a great exercise for the listeners.
It is.
To think about the words you use most often.
Yeah.
The ones that feel indispensable in your daily life.
Because language is so personal.
It really is.
It's not just about conveying information.
It's about expressing who we are.
Yeah.
How we see the world. What matters most to us.
Exactly. By paying closer attention to the language we use the words, we choose the way we string them together. I think we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
Totally.
So there you have it. Our deep dive into the world of essential vocabulary. It's been a blast exploring this list with you.
It has been.
And hopefully we've left you with some new insights about language communication.
And maybe even a little about yourself.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The exploration of language is a lifelong journey.
It is.
So keep asking questions, keep learning.
Keep playing with words.
And most importantly,
keep talking. All right, so you want to speak English?
Yes.
Right, like with more confidence, I mean.
Yeah.
Go beyond just hello and goodbye,
Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into this guide. It says, it'll unlock the secrets to sounding like a native speaker. And let me tell you, there's some seriously cool stuff in here.
I do.
Way beyond basic phrases.
Okay, so what's interesting about this guide, it challenges the traditional way of learning languages.
Oh, how so?
Well, it argues that instead of focusing only on grammar rules and vocab lists, we should be learning how to actually talk.
Communicate.
Yeah, in real life situations.
Right, that makes sense. But how do you actually go about doing that? I mean, it's easy to say talk more, but what should you actually be saying?
Well, the guide says you should start with simple phrases.
Okay.
Practical phrases that you'd use, in everyday life. Like, think of it as building a foundation for fluency.
Okay.
And it breaks these situations into like categories, like introductions, daily routine.
Yeah. Ordering food, asking for directions.
Yeah.
And each category gives you a set of phrases and expressions that native speakers use all the time.
So it's like a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
For like navigating real life conversations.
Exactly.
That's awesome. It takes away some of the pressure, of trying to figure out what to say on the spot.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is the guide encourages you to use these phrases as a springboard.
Oh, cool.
For more extended conversation.
Oh, I like that.
So let's say you're at a coffee shop, right?
Okay.
And you want to start talking to someone.
Okay.
You could start by saying, "Hi, I'm listener's name. I really like the atmosphere here."
That's so easy.
Right.
Yeah, anyone can do that.
And then you could ask a question like, do you come here often? Or what's your favorite drink?
That's such a good example.
Right.
It's simple, but it opens the door for a more like natural conversation.
Exactly.
But what about this whole
sounding like a native speaker thing?
Okay.
Is it really possible to get rid of your accent?
Well, the guide, it addresses that and offers a really fun technique, imitation.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It suggests watching popular TV shows or movies and trying to mimic how they're talking.
Wait, so you're telling me I can improve my English by watching Friends?
Exactly.
That's my kind of homework.
And it's not just about the words.
Oh, okay.
It's about paying attention to the intonation, rhythm, and stress patterns.
Mm-hmm.
These are super important for sounding natural and fluent.
Okay.
And the guide recommends this technique called shadowing.
Shadowing.
Where you listen to a short audio clip.
Okay.
And then you repeat it, immediately try to match the speaker's pace and pronunciation.
Oh, so that's shadowing.
Yeah.
That sounds intense, but I can see how it'd be effective.
Right.
Those little nuances of pronunciation.
It is.
So it's like you're training your ears and your mouth to work together.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
And the guide says you should start with really short, simple phrases.
Okay.
And then gradually work up to longer sentences and dialogues.
Yeah.
Key is to be patient and consistent.
Right.
Don't worry about sounding perfect.
No, of course.
Right.
Okay, this is all starting to make sense.
Yeah.
But I have to ask about the elephant in the room, vocabulary.
Okay.
I've always struggled with memorizing words, long lists of words.
Yeah.
Is there a more strategic way to approach this?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
The guide stresses that simply memorizing words, out of context, it isn't effective.
Mm.
It proposes this strategic vocabulary building.
What's that?
Okay. It focuses on learning words and phrases that are relevant to you.
Oh, okay.
Your interests, your goals.
Mm.
So it suggests making your own word lists based on topics you like travel or food, movies, music.
Right. Okay, that sounds way more engaging than flipping through a dictionary.
Right.
But how do you make sure you actually use these words?
Okay, so the guide recommends this technique.
Yeah.
It's called spaced repetition.
Okay.
And it involves reviewing the words at different intervals to strengthen your memory.
Oh, cool.
There's tons of apps and websites that can help with that.
That's a clever way to keep those words fresh in your mind.
Right.
So it's not just about learning new words, it's about actively using them.
Exactly. And the guide emphasizes the importance of using these words in context.
Okay.
So instead of just memorizing definitions, try to make sentences, or even short stories that use the words. This will help you actually understand them, how they're used.
In real life.
Yeah.
That's such a practical tip.
Right.
It's one thing to know the definition, but it's another to be able to use it.
Exactly.
In a sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah, confidently.
The guide suggests finding creative ways to use new words in your daily life.
Oh, like what?
Well, you could label things around your house, write journal entries.
Okay.
Challenge yourself to think in English for a few minutes each day.
Thinking in English.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of scary, to be honest.
It might seem challenging.
Yeah.
But the guide breaks it down.
Okay.
It suggests starting with simple thoughts and descriptions, like I'm hungry, or the sky is blue.
Oh.
As you get more comfortable, you can increase the complexity.
I guess it's like building a muscle.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect to lift a heavy weight on your first day at the gym.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it takes time to build strength.
And consistency.
Yeah, consistency.
And the guide emphasizes that the more you expose yourself to the language, the easier it'll be to think in English. So surround yourself with English, you know?
Books, movies, music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And your brain will naturally start to make connections.
Oh, I'm starting to be excited about this.
Yeah.
Thinking in English thing.
It's cool.
But what about those moments when you just blank
Huh?
and you can't remember a word or a phrase?
Okay.
We've all been there.
Of course, happens to everyone, even native speakers.
Okay, good.
But the guide offers some strategies for dealing with those tip of the tongue moments.
Okay, what are they?
Well, it emphasizes staying calm and using circumlocution.
Circumlocution. What's that?
That means, describing the word
that
you're trying to say.
Oh, so instead of freezing up and saying, I don't know the word, I could try to describe it.
Yeah.
Using other words.
Exactly.
Like, it's the thing you used to.
Yeah.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah, it's like playing charades in your vocabulary.
And the guide says you should practice circumlocution, regularly.
Yeah.
You can play games with friends
Well, that's fun.
where you challenge each other to describe words
Oh, I like that.
without actually saying them.
Okay, we've covered a lot
Yeah.
in this first part of our deep dive, from building a foundation of practical phrases to mastering pronunciation and expanding your vocabulary.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Well, one of the most important aspects of speaking any language is confidence.
Right.
And that's where the guide's emphasis on practice comes in.
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough to just learn the words and phrases.
Right.
You need to actually use them.
Right, and that's where I think a lot of language learners get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to practice at home,
Yeah.
but it's another to actually go out there and talk to people.
Right.
Any tips on overcoming that fear? Of making mistakes.
Well, the guide acknowledges that fear, and it gives some advice.
Okay, good.
First, it reminds us that everyone makes mistakes.
Okay.
Even native speakers.
Yeah.
It's a natural part of learning.
But how do you deal with those awkward moments when you say something wrong and people look at you like you've just spoken a foreign language?
The guide says embrace those moments.
Okay.
As opportunities to learn.
Okay.
Instead of getting flustered, try to see them as a chance to clarify.
Okay.
And improve your pronunciation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe even your confidence a little.
And it also recommends finding supportive language partners or groups where you can practice.
Mm-hmm. In a safe environment.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Right.
Surround yourself with people who will support you.
Yes.
Speaking of support, does the guide offer any strategies for actually putting all this speaking practice into action?
It does.
It's easy to talk about it, but how do you actually make it happen?
Well, the guide gives a range of practical tips for incorporating speaking into your routine.
Oh, cool.
Whether you have a partner or not. For solo practice, it suggests things like recording yourself, describing images out loud, telling stories, and even having imaginary conversations.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Those are great ideas. And for those who do have a language partner, what kind of activities does the guide recommend?
Well, the guide's packed with suggestions for interactive speaking activities.
Like what?
Like role-playing common scenarios, debating current events, discussing movies or books.
Okay.
And even playing language-based games.
Oh, that's fun.
The key is to find activities that are engaging and relevant to your interests.
This guide is like a gold mine of advice.
Yeah.
We've barely scratched the surface here of all the tips and techniques.
Yeah.
But before we dive into more specific strategies for improving your speaking, let's take a quick break to process all this awesome information.
Right.
We'll be back soon with more insights from this incredible guide.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into speaking English like you mean it. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling super inspired to put all these techniques into practice.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's so much in here.
It really is.
Before the break, we were talking about, actually using your English and overcoming that fear of making mistakes.
Right.
But what about the technical stuff?
Like what?
Like pronunciation. I know a lot of people, they struggle with specific sounds or accents.
Yeah, that's a good point. Pronunciation is often overlooked.
Yeah.
But it's super important for being understood and sounding more natural.
Yeah.
The guide actually goes into this.
Okay, so what are some things learners should focus on?
Okay, so the guide It breaks pronunciation into 3 core elements.
What are they?
Individual sounds, word stress, and connected speech.
Okay.
It says that mastering individual sounds is like the foundation.
Okay.
For example, a lot of learners have trouble with the sound.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Which doesn't exist in many languages.
No, it's hard.
Right.
It's like my tongue is doing gymnastics.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So what's the secret to getting it right? Well, the guide says to pay attention to your tongue and teeth.
Okay.
And practice those sounds in isolation until they become more natural.
Oh, okay.
There's a ton of resources online
Really?
that can show you exactly how to do it.
That's so helpful. I wish I had those when I was learning.
Right.
Okay, so what about word stress?
Word stress.
Why is that so important?
Word stress can completely change the meaning of a word.
Oh, really?
Like, for example, the word present can be a noun or a verb.
Yeah.
Right? And the stress changes depending on which one it is.
Oh, I see.
If you stress the first syllable, it means a gift.
Okay.
But if you stress the second syllable, it means to give something.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah, subtle but significant.
So how do you know which syllable to stress? Are there, like, rules?
There are some patterns.
Okay.
But English pronunciation can be unpredictable.
Yeah, for sure.
The guide recommends listening to native speakers and paying attention to which syllables they emphasize.
Okay.
It also says to, like, break down words into syllables and mark the stressed syllable.
Oh, that's a good idea.
As you learn new words.
Yeah, like make your own pronunciation guide.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. So connected speech.
What's that?
This is about how words flow together.
Okay.
In natural conversation. Native speakers often like blend sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Drop syllables.
Oh,
link words together.
Okay.
So like, do you want to go?
Yeah.
Often sounds like, do you want to go?
Yeah.
Right. So that's why it sounds like they're talking so fast.
Right. They're not just speaking fast. They're connecting the words to make it smoother.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
And the guide points out that understanding this is important for comprehending native speakers and sounding more natural yourself.
Okay.
It recommends listening for those patterns and practicing, through shadowing.
Shadowing again.
Yeah.
It seems like that technique's really useful.
It is.
For pronunciation.
It is.
But let's move beyond pronunciation.
Right.
What about, like, fluency?
Fluency.
How do you get to that point where you can just speak without, hesitating or searching for words?
Fluency is often seen as, like, the holy grail of language learning.
Yeah.
This guide offers some insights.
Okay.
It says that fluency isn't about speaking perfectly.
Oh, good.
Or never making mistakes.
Okay, good.
It's about communicating your ideas.
Yeah.
Effectively and effortlessly.
It takes the pressure off.
Right.
Yeah.
But how do you get to that point of effortlessness?
Yeah. Is it just practicing a lot?
Well, practice is essential.
Yeah.
But the guide says that the type of practice is important.
Okay.
You should do activities that push you a little bit.
Okay.
But not too much.
So like the sweet spot.
Yeah, where you're challenged but not overwhelmed.
Right. Okay. I like that.
Like working out.
Yeah.
You need to challenge your muscles but not hurt yourself.
Yeah. Good analogy.
Right. And the guide encourages learners to experiment.
With different types of practice.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's all about finding what works for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the guide emphasizes that consistency is key. It recommends practicing every day, even just for a few minutes.
Right. A little bit goes a long way.
Right. The more you use it, the more natural it'll become.
Okay. This is all starting to make sense, but I have to ask about thinking in English.
Okay.
Is it really possible? Like, can you actually switch your brain?
The guide addresses that.
Okay.
And it says that thinking in English is a skill that you can develop gradually over time.
Okay.
It's not about like turning off your native language.
Right.
It's about adding English to your thought process.
But how do you do that?
The guide recommends starting with simple things.
Okay.
Like describing objects around you in English or mentally practicing conversations.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Before you have them.
So like train your brain.
Yeah.
One thought at a time.
Exactly. And the more you immerse yourself, the easier it becomes. Surround yourself with English and your brain will like naturally start to process it.
That's fascinating. It's like rewiring your brain.
Yeah, it is.
What about those moments when you're speaking and you completely blank? You can't remember a word.
Okay.
How do you deal with that?
The guide says, first of all, stay calm.
Don't panic.
Yeah, don't panic.
Right, okay.
Everyone has those moments.
Okay, good.
Even native speakers.
Okay, that's reassuring, yeah.
So the guide suggests using circumlocution.
Circumlocution, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it means describing the word.
Right, yeah.
You're trying to say.
Okay, so like, if I can't remember the word umbrella,
Yeah.
I could say, the thing you use to keep the rain off your head.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like playing charades with your words.
Exactly.
But doesn't that sound awkward?
It might feel awkward.
Yeah.
But it's actually a very common strategy,
right,
even among native speakers.
Okay, good.
And it's a great way to, like, expand your vocabulary and learn to express yourself in different ways.
Okay, so it's turning a communication breakdown into a learning opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that.
And the guide recommends practicing this regularly.
Okay.
You can even play games with friends.
Yeah, that's fun.
To challenge each other.
We've covered so much.
I know.
In this part, from pronunciation to fluency, vocabulary, and even confidence.
It's a lot.
But there's one crucial element of speaking English like you mean it.
Okay.
That we haven't talked about yet.
Okay, what's that?
Confidence.
Ah, yes.
How do you get that inner assurance?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the guide talks about this.
Okay, good.
It says that confidence comes from a few things.
Okay, like what?
Mastering the technical stuff.
Yeah.
Having good vocabulary. And most importantly, believing in yourself.
Oh, okay. So it's not just about knowing the rules.
Right.
It's about having that, like, inner belief.
Yes, that you can do it.
But how do you get that?
The guide offers some advice.
Okay, good.
It reminds us that everyone starts somewhere.
Right.
Making mistakes is normal.
Yeah.
It encourages you to set realistic goals.
Okay.
Celebrate small wins and focus on progress.
Not perfection.
Not perfection, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good reminder.
Right. It's easy to compare ourselves to others and get discouraged.
Yeah.
But focus on your own journey
Yeah.
and those small wins.
Okay, I like that.
And the guide also says, find a supportive environment, whether it's a language partner, a group, or online.
Right. People who will support you.
Exactly.
That's so important.
It is.
To have that support.
It is.
And the guy also says,
yeah,
confidence, it's not a fixed thing.
Right.
It's something you can develop.
You can build it.
Okay, so anyone can become confident
Yes.
in speaking English.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And this guide gives you the tools to do that.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
We've covered so much in this part.
So much.
From pronunciation and fluency
Yes.
to vocabulary and confidence.
It's amazing.
Before we wrap up, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
Let all this info sink in.
Yeah.
We'll be back soon with the final part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
We'll explore even more tips.
Okay.
For speaking English like you mean it. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into speaking English like you mean it. We've explored so much already, like pronunciation and fluency, but now I'm ready for the action,
Right. Time to put it all into practice.
Yeah, make a plan.
Exactly.
And that's where this guide is really helpful.
It is. It gives you steps you can actually take.
So where do we begin?
Well, the guide says to start by figuring out your goals.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah. What do you want to achieve? Travel. Connect with people. Get a better job.
That's a good point. Got to have a reason.
Right. Then you got to see where you're at now.
Like, what am I good at? What do I need to work on?
Exactly. Be honest with yourself.
Okay, and then what? How do I actually practice?
The guide has tons of activities.
Oh, cool. Like what?
Well, for pronunciation, it suggests tongue twisters or shattering or recording yourself.
Those are good ideas.
Right.
What if I don't have anyone to practice with?
You can still practice solo.
Really?
Yeah, it's just as effective as long as you're consistent.
Okay, cool.
You can describe images out loud, talk to yourself, even make your own podcasts.
Wow, that's creative.
Right. But if you do have someone to practice with, the guide says to join groups, find a partner, or do online exchanges.
Oh, and talk to people in real life, too.
Exactly, like at a cafe or something.
Okay, but finding time to practice can be hard.
I know, but the guide has tips for staying motivated. Set realistic goals. Break things down into small steps and reward yourself.
Oh, okay, so don't be too hard on myself.
Right, and if you hit a plateau...
Yeah, what then?
Revisit your goals, try new things, ask for feedback.
So it's okay to switch things up.
Yeah, and remember why you started learning.
That's a good point.
And there are tons of resources out there to help you.
Like what?
Dictionaries, apps, websites, even just surrounding yourself with English.
Books, movies, music, yeah.
Exactly. Find what you enjoy.
Okay, so we've talked about techniques, practice, resources.
Yeah.
But what about confidence?
Ah, yes, the key ingredient.
It's it's one thing to know the rules, but it's another to actually feel confident speaking.
The guide has great advice for that.
Oh, good. What does it say?
Remember, everyone makes mistakes. Perfection isn't the goal.
Right. It's about communication.
Exactly. So shift your mindset.
From fear to curiosity.
Exactly. Embrace the challenge. Have fun.
I love that. What an inspiring way to wrap things up.
Right. Speaking English isn't about being perfect.
It's about connecting with people.
Exactly.
Well, I'm feeling super motivated to go out there and practice.
Me too. Remember, embrace the journey.
Yeah, enjoy the process.
And keep those conversations flowing.
That's a wrap on our deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to unlock some of the secrets of fluent English.
I think we all know that feeling. Like you understand the individual words, but something's missing.
It's like everyone else is in on a joke and you're left out.
Exactly. And that's where idioms come in, right? They're like these little cultural puzzles that can really trip you up.
And today, we're going deep into the world of idioms, tackling a list of 21 that are key to taking your English from intermediate to advanced, really sounding more natural and fluent.
And you know, idioms aren't just about sounding good, are they? They often give us a glimpse into the history and the culture of a language.
Oh, absolutely. So we'll be unpacking not just what these idioms mean, but also where they come from and how to use them effectively in different situations.
And maybe even a few funny stories along the way. So are you ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's get started with our first idiom, a blessing in disguise. Have you ever experienced something that seemed bad at first, but turned out to be a good thing in the end?
I think we all have. It's like that feeling when you miss a flight and then you find out it got delayed for hours anyway.
Exactly. Or maybe you didn't get the job you really wanted, but ended up with an even better opportunity. It's those moments when we realize that things happen for a reason.
And that sometimes what we perceive as setbacks can actually lead us to something much better.
It's like the universe has a plan, right?
Right. And speaking of getting to the point, our next idiom is beat around the bush. I think we're all guilty of this sometimes, especially when we have to have a difficult conversation.
Oh, for sure. Instead of just coming out and saying what we mean, we kind of dance around the topic, hoping the other person will figure it out.
Yeah, like when you want to ask for a raise, but you start talking about how much you love your job and how dedicated you are.
Instead of just saying, hey, I think I deserve a raise.
Right. It's that awkward feeling of wanting to address something but not wanting to be too direct.
So how do we break out of that beating around the bush habit? Any tips for being more direct?
Well, I think being mindful of it is the first step, recognizing when we're doing it, and then just practicing being more straightforward, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first.
Now picture this. You're at a party, you don't know many people, and you want to start a conversation. That's where you need to break the ice.
Oh yes, break the ice. That's a classic one. It's all about easing that initial awkwardness, isn't it?
Exactly. It's about creating that first connection, like literally breaking through a sheet of ice to open up a pathway for conversation.
And sometimes it can be as simple as a compliment, you know, like, I love your shoes.
Or even a simple question like, have you tried any of the appetizers yet? Anything to get the conversation flowing.
Exactly. And, you know, sometimes humor can be a great icebreaker, too.
Oh, yeah. A well-timed joke can definitely lighten the mood.
It's all about finding that common ground, that shared moment of laughter.
Now, let's talk about something that can cost an arm and a leg. It's when something is just ridiculously expensive.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, have you seen the prices of concert tickets these days?
Oh my gosh, they're insane.
It's like they want you to give up a limb just to see your favorite band.
It's that feeling of, it's really worth that much.
Right? But sometimes you just gotta splurge, you know?
But let's talk about those satisfying moments when you get something exactly right, like when you hit the nail on the head.
Ah, yes, it's that feeling of nailing it, isn't it? Like when you perfectly describe a situation or you figure out the root cause of a problem.
With like that aha moment. And it likely comes from, you know, actually hammering a nail and getting it perfectly straight.
Right. And it's such a satisfying feeling, whether you're talking about solving a problem or just understanding a concept.
So have you ever hit the nail on the head with something recently?
Let me think. Oh, actually, just the other day, a friend was describing a situation they were going through, and I was able to offer some advice that really resonated with them. They said, I hit the nail on the head.
It's like you were able to see the situation clearly and offer the perfect solution.
Exactly. It felt good to be able to help.
Now, switching gears a bit, have you ever been feeling under the weather?
Ooh, I think we all know that feeling. It's that kind of blah feeling when you're just not quite yourself.
Right, like maybe you have a slight cold or just feel a bit run down.
And no one wants to hear all your symptoms.
Exactly. Under the weather is a much gentler way to say, I'm not feeling great.
And I've always wondered where that one came from.
Me too. I've heard it might be related to sailors feeling seasick when the weather was rough.
Oh, that makes sense. Like the weather is literally affecting how you feel.
Now be careful not to let the cat out of the bag.
Oops. That's when you accidentally reveal a secret, isn't it?
Exactly. Like if you're planning a surprise party and someone spills the beans to the guest of honor.
I've always loved the imagery with that one. Like imagine a cat jumping out of a bag and everyone's surprised.
It's such a vivid way to describe that moment of, oh no, I shouldn't have said that.
And it happens to the best of us.
So how do we avoid those cat out of the bag situations? Any tips for keeping secrets safe?
I think sometimes it's better not to know the secret at all if you're someone who tends to blurt things out.
That's a great point. If you don't know, you can't accidentally reveal it.
Exactly. Or, just be extra careful about who you talk to and what you say.
But sometimes you just have to accept that the ball is in your court.
Ah, yes. That's when it's someone else's turn to make a decision or take action.
It's like passing the baton in a relay race.
Exactly. You've done your part, and now it's up to them to decide what to do next.
It's often used in negotiations or discussions, right?
Yes, like when you've presented your offer and you're waiting for the other person to respond.
And sometimes, to get things done, you just have to burn the midnight oil.
Yeah, that's a good one. It means staying up late, working, usually on a project or deadline.
Back in the day, it literally meant working by the light of an oil lamp.
Right. But nowadays, it's more about that feeling of burning the candle at both ends.
But sometimes, you have to face those challenges head on. Like when you have to bite the bullet.
It means doing something difficult or unpleasant, even though you don't want to.
Like going to the dentist, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or having that tough conversation you've been putting off.
But on a brighter note, some things happen very rarely, like once in a blue moon.
Oh, I love this one. It's so poetic. And it actually refers to a real astronomical event.
Really?
Yeah. When a second full moon occurs within the same calendar month. It doesn't actually look blue, though.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's something that happens very infrequently.
Exactly. Like winning the lottery or seeing a unicorn.
Now, let's talk about maximizing efficiency. It's like when you kill two birds with one stone.
Yes. It's about accomplishing two things with one action, isn't it?
Like if you need to go to the post office and the grocery store, and they're right next to each other, you can do both errands in one trip.
Exactly. It's all about being smart with your time and effort.
And sometimes things are surprisingly easy, like a piece of cake.
Oh, yeah. That's a great way to say something was simple and effortless.
It makes it sound almost enjoyable, right? Like it was no trouble at all.
Exactly. Like that exam was a piece of cake.
But be careful not to put all your eggs in one basket.
Oh, yes. That's a good reminder. It's about diversification, isn't it? Not putting all your hopes or resources into one thing.
Exactly. It's like spreading your risk so if one thing doesn't work out, you have others to fall back on.
Right. Like, don't invest all your money in one stock. Or don't rely on just one person for your happiness.
Speaking of revealing secrets, sometimes you accidentally spill the beans.
Oops. That's like letting the cat out of the bag. Right. But maybe a bit more unintentional.
Right. It's like you just blurt something out without thinking.
And it can be so embarrassing.
It is. Especially if it's a secret that you're supposed to keep.
Oh, for sure. But sometimes it's just a funny slip-up.
But it's always important to consider different perspectives and not take everything at face value. That's when you take something with a grain of salt.
Yeah, it means being a little skeptical, doesn't it? Not believing everything you hear.
Especially in today's world, with so much information flying around, it's crucial to be discerning, to question things.
Right. Not everything is as it seems.
So how do you decide what to take with a grain of salt? What are some red flags?
That's a good question. I think it's about looking at the source of the information, Is it a reliable source?
And sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you just have to throw in the towel.
Yeah, that's when you admit defeat, isn't it? You realize it's time to give up.
It's like knowing when to walk away from a fight.
Right. It's not always easy, but sometimes it's the best thing to do.
And have you ever felt like you were barking up the wrong tree?
Oh, definitely. It's when you're pursuing a path or a solution that's just not going to work.
You're putting in all this effort, but you're headed in the wrong direction.
It's like you're lost in the woods and you keep going deeper and deeper, but you're not getting any closer to your destination.
Exactly. And sometimes it takes a while to realize that you're on the wrong track.
It does. But it's important to be able to recognize those dead ends and be willing to change course.
So how do you know when it's time to stop barking up the wrong tree and try a different approach?
I think it's about paying attention to the signs. If you're not making any progress, if you keep hitting roadblocks, it might be time to step back and reassess your strategy.
That's great advice. Now, wouldn't it be amazing to always have the best of both worlds?
That is the dream, isn't it? It's like having your cake and eating it too.
Exactly. It's about finding that perfect balance, that ideal situation where you get the advantages of two seemingly opposite things.
Like imagine working from home, but still having that sense of community and collaboration that comes from being in an office.
But sometimes you just have to throw caution to the wind and go for it.
Oh, absolutely. It's about embracing risk and spontaneity, letting go of your fears and just going for it.
It's like that feeling of freedom and excitement when you decide to do something unexpected.
Exactly. Like quitting your job to travel the world.
And finally, going above and beyond, giving it your all, that's going the extra mile.
It's about exceeding expectations, isn't it? Putting in that extra effort to make something truly special.
Like staying late to help a colleague finish a project, or going out of your way to make a customer happy. It's those little things that make a big difference.
And, going the extra mile doesn't always have to be about work. It can be about anything, really.
Oh, absolutely. It's about that attitude of always striving to do your best.
Exactly. And it's something that people really appreciate, whether it's in your personal or professional life.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, explored 21 essential idioms. What stands out to you so far? Any favorites?
So many great ones. I think bite the bullet is one that really resonates with me. It's a reminder that sometimes we just have to face those challenges head on, even if it's uncomfortable. What about you?
I think the best of both worlds really appeals to me. That idea of finding balance and enjoying the benefits of different perspectives.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's a reminder that we don't always have to choose one thing over another. Sometimes we can find a way to have it all.
Exactly. And that's a great note to end on for this part of our deep dive. We've only just begun to scratch the surface of these idioms, but we'll be back soon to explore even more of their nuances and applications.
Looking forward to it. I think for me, bite the bullet is one of the ones that really stands out.
Yeah, I get that. Knowing the history behind it too, like, wow.
It just highlights that kind of courage,
Right.
that we need to face things we don't really want to.
Like steeling yourself, getting ready.
Totally.
And have you ever had to bite the bullet recently?
Oh, all the time. I think we all do, right?
Yeah.
But one that comes to mind is I remember having to give a presentation to, a huge audience.
Ooh, that's tough.
Yeah. And I was so terrified, but I knew I just had to bite the bullet, get up there and do it.
And I bet once you did, it wasn't so bad.
It's always like that, right? The anticipation is worse.
The build-up. And it makes you stronger, too, each time.
Oh, absolutely. And that actually makes me think of barking up the wrong tree, because sometimes you think you're, doing the right thing.
Putting in all this effort.
And then you realize, this is a dead end.
You're headed in the wrong direction.
Completely. And that happens a lot, I think, especially today with so much information.
Oh, yeah. It's overwhelming.
It really is. And so it's easy to get sidetracked.
Yeah, to go down rabbit holes.
But I think there's a lot of value in recognizing that you're doing that.
Totally.
And then you can say, okay, well, what other options do I have? How else can I approach this?
It's about being flexible, being adaptable.
Yeah, and I think that leads us nicely to the best of both worlds, because...
Ooh, the ideal.
Right. Because sometimes you do have to choose one or the other, but sometimes you can find a way to get the benefits of both.
To kind of merge them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, having that flexibility of working remotely, but also still having that in-person connection.
Yeah, that sense of community.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to throw caution to the wind.
And just go for it.
Right.
I love those moments.
Those are the best, those spontaneous decisions.
Absolutely. Even if it's a little bit scary, a little bit risky.
Like quitting your job to travel the world.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
But so freeing. Right.
It is. And I think those are the moments that really can shape our lives.
Yeah, those leaps of faith.
For sure.
And then it's about putting in that extra effort, going the extra mile.
Yes, it's like going above and beyond.
Right, really making a difference.
Yeah, exceeding those expectations.
So have you gone the extra mile for anything lately?
I've been really focused on a project at work.
Okay.
I've been, putting in the extra hours and really trying to make sure it's the best it can be.
To make it shine.
Yeah.
So we've talked about how to use these idioms, but I think it's also interesting to think about what they reveal about about the culture of English speakers.
What do you think?
Well, I think one theme that keeps coming up is hard work, perseverance.
Yeah, I see that. Like, bite the bullet, burn the midnight oil. It's like you push through those challenges.
You don't give up.
Exactly.
You get it done.
And then you also have throw caution to the wind, which is more about that kind of risk-taking spirit.
Yeah, that adventurous side.
So it's interesting. It's like there's that balance.
Of both.
Yeah, you work hard, but you're not afraid to try new things and take a chance.
And the best of both worlds speaks to that, that balance, compromise.
Yeah, like finding the middle ground.
Yeah.
Trying to see things from different perspectives.
And take it with a grain of salt, which is kind of like, don't believe everything you hear, right?
Question things.
Be a critical thinker.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what would you say are some key takeaways for our listeners?
I think don't be afraid to start using these idioms. You know, the more you use them, the more natural they'll feel.
Practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to remember that idioms are more than just words. They're really a window into the culture.
Yeah, they tell us something about the values and the beliefs of the people who use them.
So pay attention to how people use them in different contexts, and you'll start to pick up on those nuances.
Yeah, you'll gain a deeper understanding, not just of the language, but of the culture as well.
Yeah, it really is fascinating to see how much we can learn just from these little phrases. It's like they're little time capsules of culture. So let's talk a little bit more about that connection between language and culture.
Yeah.
Do you think the idioms we use, do they actually influence how we think?
Ooh, that's a really interesting question.
Right. It makes you wonder, like, if these phrases that we use all the time,
Yeah.
if they kind of subtly shape our perceptions of the world,
Yeah.
like spill the beans, for example, does that say something about a culture that values discretion?
Yeah.
Or does using that idiom actually reinforce that value, make us more aware of keeping secrets?
Yeah, it's like, which came first?
The chicken or the egg?
Exactly. Does language reflect culture, or does it shape it?
Or maybe a bit of both.
I think it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
You know? It's this kind of back and forth between the words we use and how we see the world.
And that makes me think about throw caution to the wind, too.
Yeah.
Does that reflect a culture that's maybe more prone to taking risks?
Yeah, or does it encourage us to be more adventurous, you know?
Right, to embrace those leaps of faith and the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Does that suggest that we like balance, compromise, or does it actually encourage us to seek out those win-win situations?
Yeah. It's really fascinating to think about.
It's like language is this tool that can both reflect and influence our values and beliefs.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes learning idioms, you know, so much fun. Yeah. It's not just about the words themselves. It's about what they tell us about the culture and about ourselves, really.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into these 21 essential idioms, what would you say is your biggest takeaway for our listeners?
Don't just memorize them, experience them.
Ooh, I love that.
You know, listen for them when you hear people talking, when you watch movies, when you listen to music.
See how they're using them in real life.
Exactly. And try using them yourself. You know, the more you use them,
the more natural they'll feel.
Absolutely.
And it's like anything else you're learning. The more you immerse yourself, the more it becomes part of you. And the more you explore language, the more you appreciate its beauty and its power.
It's true. Language it's a gift.
It is.
You know, it's a way to connect with other people and to understand different cultures.
To build bridges.
Exactly. And idioms are like little gems.
They are.
That add so much richness to our communication.
So keep exploring, keep discovering, and keep diving deep into the world of words.
Yes.
Who knows what treasures you'll uncover.
Happy exploring. And until next time, may your conversations be filled with colorful idioms and insightful discoveries. Hey there, fellow bookworms. Ready to level up your reading game? Today we're going deep, way past just finishing a book.
Yeah, think Reading Ninja. This is your secret decoder ring for unlocking those hidden layers of meaning in anything you read.
And our guide. This awesome piece, 7 tips to improve your reading at an advanced level. Practical advice, not just theory.
Totally. And it uses some really cool examples like switching between Great Gatsby and Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, you know, to really stretch those reading muscles.
I love that, reading against the grain. It's so easy to stay in our comfort zones. What about you? What do you usually gravitate towards? What would be a surprising genre for you?
Oh, good question. I tend to lean towards nonfiction, history, biographies, that kind of thing. But to shake things up, maybe a graphic novel or poetry. I don't read a ton of poetry.
I get that. I love a good mystery, but I've been meaning to try more sci-fi, see what's out there. Which brings us to tip number 1, diversify your reading diet. The source is all about exploring different genres, styles, and topics.
Makes sense, right? Like food. You don't want to eat the same thing every day. You miss out on all those flavors and nutrients. Same with reading. Each genre has its own strengths, its own way of seeing the world.
Exactly. And they even suggest this cool activity. Read a news article on climate change, then read a poem on the same topic. See how different forms of writing can change your understanding.
That's such a good idea. The news article gives you the facts, right? But the poem might explore the emotional side, the impact on people. 2 totally different angles, but both important for understanding the whole picture.
Totally. Tip number 2 is all about active reading, something I'm always working on. It's about engaging with the text, not just skimming.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens. Active reading is like having a conversation with the author, asking questions, pushing back, making those connections in your own mind.
The source talks about the SQ3R method. Can you break that down for us? Why is it so helpful, especially with really complex texts?
I see SQ3R as a brain hack for better reading. It stands for survey, question, read, recite, review. Especially with dense stuff, it makes you slow down and engage on different levels. Like if you're reading the Federalist Papers, before diving in, you'd survey the structure, maybe skim headings or topic sentences.
So kind of setting the stage, getting an overview.
Exactly. Then you come up with questions based on what you see. What are the main points? What arguments is the author making? Now you're actively searching for answers as you read.
It's like a detective game.
Yes. Then the read phase, where you actively look for those answers.
Wait.
Next, you recite or summarize what you read in your own words. This helps solidify your understanding. And finally, review to make sure you remember the key points.
Intense, but it sounds super effective, especially for those brain bender books.
A mental workout, but a good one.
Okay, tip number 3 always gets me excited. Expanding our vocabulary. They suggest keeping a vocabulary journal, which sounds fun.
Like building your arsenal of words.
But what about those words that just completely stump you, like singularity in Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time? I remember just staring at that one, completely lost.
I know that feeling. You got to become a word detective. Context is everything. You can often figure out the meaning using root words, prefixes, suffixes, break it down into smaller parts.
Like solving a puzzle. And once you crack the code, that word unlocks a whole new level of understanding. I had that with epistemology in a philosophy book. I finally broke it down. Episteme meaning knowledge, and logos meaning study. Boom, the study of knowledge.
It's the best feeling. And those aha moments build on each other. Every new word opens up more understanding. You can tackle even more complex stuff.
Brain leveling up. Tip number 4 is where it gets interesting. Author's craft. Understanding the why behind an author's choices.
It's like peeking behind the curtain, seeing the magician's secrets.
Totally. They use 1984 as an example how Orwell creates that feeling of oppression through his writing. What are some clues we can look for to get an author's purpose?
Oh, so many. Tone, imagery, sentence structure, rhetorical devices, they all add up. Like, think about it. A short, choppy sentence creates urgency, tension, right? But a long, flowing one might feel more thoughtful.
Like composing music with words, using different instruments to create different effects.
Great analogy. And you, as the reader, start to pick up on those little cues. You see how everything plays a role. Word choice, pacing, even punctuation.
Like learning a secret language. They suggest analyzing a paragraph from Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse to really examine the sentence structure. I challenge you, try that with anything you're reading. Pick a passage and dissect it. It's amazing what you find.
I agree. Ask yourself, what choices are they making and why? You'll see patterns, appreciate the craft even more.
Okay, tip number 5 gets into summarizing and critical thinking. Essential skills for any advanced reader. I'll admit, sometimes I just want to get lost in the story, but slowing down to analyze is crucial too.
It's like the difference between watching a movie passively versus really engaging with it. When you summarize, you got to boil things down to the essence, really understand the main points. Critical thinking is about questioning assumptions, looking at different perspectives, and evaluating the evidence.
They talk about summarizing an article on AI, which is constantly changing. Imagine trying to sum up all those complex ideas.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
But so valuable. Critical thinking is even more important now. We're bombarded with information from everywhere. You got to be able to tell fact from opinion, bias from objectivity.
It's about being a smart consumer of information, not just believing everything you read.
Exactly. And a great way to practice those skills is joining a book club or discussion group.
Have you ever read Thoreau's Civil Disobedience? Talk about sparking debate. Those ideas about individual conscience versus the state are still so relevant. Imagine discussing that in a book club. Things could get heated in a good way.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that one. A book club is like having your own team of experts to bounce ideas off of. You hear different interpretations, challenge your own assumptions. You might discover things you missed on your own.
It's like having multiple lenses to view the same material. Plus, you might find new authors or genres you wouldn't have tried otherwise. And it's just fun to geek out with other book lovers.
Totally. It's a built-in support system for your reading journey.
Speaking of support, ready for tip number 6. This one might surprise you. Reading aloud.
I know, right? It sounds a bit counterintuitive, but trust me, there are benefits, especially for complex texts.
They even suggest trying it with Shakespearean sonnets. To appreciate the rhythm and flow, like adding another dimension to the words.
It is. It forces you to slow down, enunciate clearly, savor the language. Especially helpful with poetry, but even with prose it makes a difference. Imagine tackling a dense philosophical argument out loud. It becomes so much clearer.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. It's like using more of your senses to engage with the material.
Exactly. And remember, we learned language through sound first. Reading aloud taps into that. Plus, think about when we were kids reading aloud together. We learned so much that way.
I loved those read-alouds in school. And the source even says, record yourself reading aloud and listen back.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
It might feel awkward, but it's a fantastic way to see where you stumble, work on pronunciation, improve fluency, like your own personal coach.
I'm adding that to my toolkit. Okay, our final tip. Goal setting. I'm all about goals, but sometimes I'm not sure where to start, especially with something as broad as reading.
I get that. The source uses War and Peace as an example, which is a big one, but they have a great point. Break down big goals into smaller chunks.
So instead of I'm going to read War and Peace, it's I'm going to read 50 pages a week.
Exactly. It feels much less scary.
Yeah.
And you get that sense of accomplishment as you hit those smaller milestones.
And there are great tools to help you track your progress. I love Goodreads. It's so motivating to see what you've read, find new books, share your thoughts.
It's a great community for book lovers.
Yeah.
And speaking of community, they mentioned book clubs again. There's nothing like connecting with other readers and really diving deep together.
It's like a cheering squad for your reading journey. So we've covered a lot. Diversifying our reading, active reading, vocabulary, author's craft, summarizing, reading aloud, and goal setting. It's been quite the exploration of becoming a more advanced reader.
It has. And I hope our listeners feel inspired to take their reading to that next level.
Me too. You know, as we wrap up this part, it makes me think about the power of reading. It's not just about knowledge. It's about understanding the world and ourselves better.
That's beautifully put. It's about empathy, critical thinking, opening ourselves up to new perspectives and possibilities.
Exactly. And it's a journey that never really ends. There's always something new to discover, a new connection to make.
And with the right tools and techniques, we can keep growing as readers our whole lives.
I love that. So, as we wrap up this segment of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought. What's one book or article you've always wanted to read, but felt intimidated by?
What's that one that's been sitting on your shelf, whispering promises of adventure?
Maybe it's a classic, a dense philosophical work, or something scientific that's always intrigued you. Now is the time to embrace the challenge.
Use the tips we've discussed and approach it with confidence, curiosity, a sense of adventure. You might be surprised.
Now, before we move on to part 2, we want to hear from you. What's one aha moment you've had while reading? Share your stories, your insights, your favorite reading techniques. We'll be back soon with more on how to level up your reading game.
That reminds me of when I was wrestling with this really dense philosophy book, and I was just stuck. I tried recording myself reading it aloud just to see, and honestly,
what happened?
It was like someone else was reading. I picked up on all these things I totally missed before.
It's amazing how just changing how you interact with the text can do that. Unlock it. Speaking of unlocking, tip number 6 is all about reading aloud.
Yeah, I know, right? Sounds a bit old school.
Yeah, like elementary school. But the source makes a good case for it, especially for becoming more advanced readers.
Certainly.
They even suggest reading Shakespeare out loud, like those sonnets.
Oh, yeah.
To get the rhythm and flow. What's the idea there?
When you read silently, Don't you think you kind of skim? Your mind races ahead.
Oh, for sure.
But reading aloud, you got to slow down, enunciate every word, really savor the language. Like it adds this whole other dimension.
Almost like performing it, bringing it to life. So you pick up on those subtle things you might miss otherwise.
Exactly. And it's not just poetry. Think about a tough philosophical argument, or even a legal document. Reading it aloud can make it so much clearer.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's like using more of your senses to really engage with it, which helps you remember it better too.
Right. And we learn language through hearing first, don't we? Yeah. So reading aloud kind of taps into that. Plus, it's like when we were kids reading aloud together.
Yeah.
Remember how much we absorbed?
I do. Those were great. And the source even says to try recording yourself reading aloud and listening back.
I know, it sounds a little weird.
Yeah, but it could be really helpful.
Absolutely. You can hear where you trip up, work on pronunciation, get more fluent overall. It's like having your own personal coach.
I gotta try that. Okay, last tip from the source. Goal setting. I'm a huge believer in goals, but I'm not always sure where to begin with reading. It can feel so overwhelming.
Yeah, I understand that. They use War and Peace as an example, which, yeah.
That's a big one, intimidating. But their point is, break it down.
Exactly. So instead of I'm going to read War and Peace, maybe it's I'm going to read 50 pages a week.
Right. Way less daunting.
And you get that feeling of accomplishment as you hit those smaller goals.
Which keeps you motivated. And there are great tools to help, like Goodreads. I love that. Seeing your progress, finding new books, sharing your thoughts.
It's such a great community for book lovers. And that brings us back to community in general, right?
Yeah. Book clubs, online groups, even just friends you swap books with. It makes a difference.
Totally. Having other readers around you, it's like a support system.
A cheering squad for your reading.
I like that. And with all this talk about tips and goals, it's important to remember, reading should be fun.
Oh, absolutely.
We can get so caught up in improving that we forget to enjoy a good book.
So true. It shouldn't feel like work.
It's like anything else. You got to find that sweet spot between challenge and pleasure.
All right. We've done a deep dive on these 7 tips, but before we go, I want to ask you, the listener, what really stuck with you?
Was there one that was like, aha, that's it?
Or maybe a challenge you're ready to tackle now?
Want to hear your thoughts. Reading is a journey, and the best ones are shared.
So let's keep talking. What are your favorite ways to level up your reading game? We'll be back with more soon. So we've been talking about all these great tips for becoming better readers. But sometimes, even with the best techniques, you just hit a wall.
For sure.
You get those books, those articles, even just certain paragraphs, and you're like, ugh, this is a struggle.
Yeah.
And it can be so discouraging. You're excited to read something new, and then it just doesn't click. What do you do when you run into that, when you're just not connecting?
Well, first you got to remember, it's okay. It's normal to struggle with certain things.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're a bad reader or that the writing is bad. Sometimes it's just not a good fit for you.
I like that, giving yourself permission to not love everything.
Exactly. Once you accept that, you can look at those tougher texts with more, maybe a little kindness towards yourself and curiosity.
So instead of getting frustrated, you ask, okay, what's making this hard for me?
Yeah. Is it the vocabulary, the sentences, the topic itself?
Right.
And once you figure out what it is, you can start to find ways to deal with it. Vocabulary. Maybe you grab the dictionary or look for clues in the surrounding words. Tricky sentences. Break them down into smaller parts. Or read them aloud. See if the rhythm helps.
You're like a reading detective, using your tools to crack the case.
I love that. And sometimes the best thing is to just walk away for a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Go for a walk, listen to music, do something completely different. Come back with fresh eyes.
That distance can really help. It's like with a painting, you step back to see the whole picture.
Exactly. And honestly, remember that reading should be fun. If you're always fighting with it, feeling frustrated, maybe it's time to try something else.
I agree. A different genre, a new author, or even an old favorite that always makes you happy. There's so many amazing books out there. There's something for everyone.
For sure. The important thing is to find what you're curious about, what sparks your imagination.
As we wrap up this whole deep dive into reading, it keeps coming back to this. Yeah. It's so personal.
It really is.
We can learn techniques, we can get better at it, but at the end of the day, it's that connection you make with what you're reading.
It's like connecting with another mind, even if they lived centuries ago, exploring new worlds, understanding ourselves and the universe better.
A journey of discovery. And like all good journeys, the best thing is to go with curiosity, a sense of wonder, and be open to getting a little lost along the way.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never lose that sense of wonder. That's the magic of reading.
That's all for this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you found some inspiration to level up your reading game. Until next time, happy reading.
Ever get that feeling you might be using a word wrong, but you're too afraid to ask?
Oh, yeah.
Well, fear no more. Because today we're diving deep into 15 words that even fluent English speakers mess up. We've got a YouTube script here, all about leveling up your vocabulary. And you might be surprised by some of these common mistakes.
It is fascinating, though, how some of these errors stem from subtle distinctions that are easy to miss in casual conversation.
Okay, let's unpack this. We'll start with some beginner traps. Words that seem straightforward, but can be surprisingly tricky. I'll be honest, the word literally is one I hear misused all the time.
Yep.
Just the other day, someone told me they were literally dying from how much they had to do that week.
Yes. Literally seems to be a word that's been taken hostage by hyperbole.
So remind us, what should literally mean? Why is it important to use it correctly?
Literally means something actually happened, exactly as stated.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the reality of a situation, not an exaggeration.
Right.
While your friend might have felt overwhelmed, they weren't literally dying.
Right.
You see, using literally correctly, make sure your words carry their intended weight. It's about precision and clarity, especially in an age where misinformation can spread so easily.
That's a really good point. The impact on communication is huge. Okay, another beginner word that trips people up is unique. I once saw a store advertising a sale on very unique items. Something about that just felt off.
That's because unique means one of a kind.
Right.
Inherently special. It stands alone.
Right.
So adding modifiers like very or quite is redundant and actually weakens the impact of the word.
So instead of saying something is very unique, how can we highlight that specialness in everyday conversation?
Let the word unique speak for itself.
Okay.
You could say that painting is truly unique or her style is unique. You're emphasizing the inherent specialness without needing to qualify it further.
That's so interesting. I can see how that subtle shift makes a big difference. Even these beginner words have hidden depths. You really have to think about their true meaning.
Absolutely, and that's what makes language so fascinating. Now, prepare to have some assumptions challenged because some words have meanings completely different from what most people assume.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example of one of these words.
Let's start with irony.
Okay.
Many people confuse irony with simple coincidence or bad luck. For example, someone might say, "It's so ironic that I won the lottery and then got hit by a car."
So winning the lottery and then getting hit by a car, that's just bad luck, not irony.
Yeah.
What makes a situation truly ironic?
True irony involves a situation where the outcome is the opposite of what was expected, often with a humorous or sarcastic undertone. A classic example would be a fire station burning down. It's not just about unfortunate timing, it's about a surprising reversal of expectations.
Wow, that makes so much sense. It's not just about something bad happening. It's about the unexpected nature of the situation.
You see, understanding irony helps us analyze situations more deeply. It's not just about bad luck. It's about recognizing the unexpected and sometimes absurd nature of life.
Speaking of unexpected twists, let's talk about a word, often misused in situations with high stakes. Alibis. I feel like I hear people using alibi as a synonym for any kind of excuse.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have a good alibi.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a common mistake. People might say, "I didn't finish the project, but I have a good alibi."
Wait, so if it's not just any excuse, what makes a real alibi? I'm genuinely confused.
An alibi has a very specific legal meaning.
Okay.
It refers to proof that someone was somewhere else at the time a crime was committed, demonstrating their innocence. It's not just any excuse. It's evidence that clears someone of suspicion.
So using alibi to explain why you didn't finish a project wouldn't really make sense.
Exactly. Using alibi in casual conversation when you simply mean excuse can actually undermine your credibility. It shows a lack of precision in your language.
Okay, this is making me rethink how I use these words. What other intermediate words are lurking out there, ready to trip us up?
How about a word that's often confused with its near opposite? Disinterested. Many people use disinterested to mean uninterested or bored. For instance, someone might say, "I was completely disinterested in that meeting."
Disinterested. If it doesn't mean bored or uninterested, then what does it actually mean?
Disinterested actually describes someone who is impartial or unbiased. free from personal stake or interest in a situation. A good example would be a judge who must remain disinterested in the outcome of a case.
Okay.
They can't be swayed by personal opinions or biases.
So if I wanted to say that I found the meeting boring, disinterested wouldn't be the right word to use.
Precisely. In that case, uninterested or bored would be more accurate.
Right.
Disinterested implies neutrality and objectivity. It's about being impartial, not uncaring.
I never realized how a single word could completely change the tone and meaning of a sentence. It's all about understanding those subtle but powerful nuances.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here to explore. Are you ready to be bemused by the next word?
Bemused. Okay, you've definitely got my attention. What's so tricky about this one?
People often think bemused means amused or entertained.
Okay.
You might hear someone say, I was bemused by his silly jokes.
So if bemused doesn't mean amused, then what's the real meaning?
Bemused actually means puzzled, bewildered, or even slightly confused. Think of it as a state of mild perplexity, for example. You might be bemused by a riddle you can't solve.
Huh?
Or a strange event you don't fully understand.
So it's not about laughing at a joke. It's about that feeling of, wait, what just happened?
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense.
Imagine someone watching a magic trick.
Right.
Their brow furrowed, a slight smile playing on their lips.
Yeah.
That's bemusement. It's not amusement, but a fascinated perplexity.
Okay, now I'm really starting to understand the difference.
Uh-huh.
Bemused is a much richer word than I realized.
Mm-hmm.
It's about that space between amusement and confusion.
Exactly. And these subtle distinctions can make a big difference in how your message is received. Are you ready for our final intermediate word?
Bring it on. I'm ready to tackle anything.
All right. Let's explore a word that's often misused to describe something grand or impressive. Enormity. People often use enormity to emphasize the sheer size or scope of something.
Uh-huh.
You might hear someone say, I was overwhelmed by the enormity of the project.
That's how I usually use it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a feeling it doesn't quite mean what I think it means.
Yeah.
What's the real meaning?
While enormity can relate to size, its primary meaning leans towards something more serious and weighty.
Okay.
It often refers to extreme wickedness, outrageousness, or the sheer gravity of a situation.
Right.
Particularly in a moral or ethical context.
So it's less about physical size and more about the weight of the implications.
Precisely. For instance, if you were discussing a horrific crime, you might speak of the enormity of the act to emphasize its moral depravity and the severity of its consequences.
Wow, that puts the word in a whole new light. It's not just about something being big, it's about something being profoundly impactful, often in a negative sense.
Exactly. It's a word that carries a lot of weight, both literally and figuratively.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already. And I'm starting to feel the enormity and the true sense of the word, of all these linguistic nuances. What's next on our journey?
Next, we'll be venturing into the realm of advanced words, where the nuances become even more intricate. Are you ready to level up your vocabulary even further?
Absolutely. I'm eager to see what other linguistic gems await us in this deep dive into words.
Right.
It'd be great.
Awesome. Fasten your seatbelts, because these advanced words can be real brain twisters. They're the ones that often pop up in intellectual discussions or professional settings, and misusing them can unfortunately make you sound less credible.
Okay, I'm ready to face the advanced word challenge head on. Let's start with one that I've definitely struggled with in the past.
Decimate.
Decimate is fascinating because its common usage has drifted quite far from its original meaning. People often use it as a synonym for completely destroy, like saying the hurricane decimated the coastal towns. Yeah, I've definitely heard it used that way. But if it doesn't mean to completely destroy, then what does it actually mean?
Decimate has a very specific historical root. It comes from the ancient Roman practice of punishing mutinous troops by killing 1 out of every 10 soldiers. So the original meaning of decimate is to reduce by 1/10, not to obliterate completely.
Wow, I had no idea. That's a pretty grim origin story for a word. So using decimate to describe the total destruction of a town wouldn't be quite right.
Exactly. It's a case of hyperbole overtaking precision. While the impact of a hurricane can be devastating, it's unlikely to literally reduce a town's population by exactly 1/10.
This is why I love these deep dives. You uncover these hidden layers of meaning that we often miss in everyday conversation. It's like learning a secret code.
This word's bloody history reminds us that language carries the weight of the past, Even today, decimate suggests a severe calculated reduction, not total destruction.
Okay, what other advanced words are waiting to be decoded?
Let's tackle one that often gets misused in academic circles, peruse.
Peruse. I'll admit I've been guilty of using this one incorrectly myself. I always thought it meant to quickly skim through something.
That's a very common misconception. In reality, peruse means to read thoroughly and carefully. It implies a close and attentive examination of a text, not a hasty glance.
So if I said I perused the report before the meeting, it would mean I'd given it a very close read, not just skim the headings.
Precisely. Using peruse correctly conveys a sense of diligence and attention to detail. It suggests you've really absorbed the information.
This is another one of those aha moments. I'm realizing that using these advanced words correctly can signal a certain level of intellectual rigor. It shows you're not just skimming the surface.
Exactly. It's about choosing words that accurately reflect the depth of your engagement with the topic.
All right, bring on the next advanced word challenge. I'm feeling more and more confident with each one we tackle.
Let's see if you can crack the code on this one. Nonplussed.
Nonplussed. This one seems tricky. I've heard it used to describe someone who's calm and collected under pressure. Like, even though the presentation went wrong, she remained nonplussed.
That's a clever guess, but it's actually the opposite. Nonplussed describes a state of being surprised and confused, often to the point of speechlessness. It's that feeling of being caught off guard and unsure how to react.
Wow, so it's almost like being speechless with shock.
Exactly. Nonplussed implies a momentary loss of composure, a sense of being bewildered. It's that deer in the headlights feeling.
That makes so much more sense. I can see how misusing this word could lead to some awkward situations.
Indeed, it highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of these advanced words. They can have a big impact on how our message is perceived.
Okay, what other advanced word adventures await us? I'm ready to expand my vocabulary horizons.
Let's explore a word that often gets used in a way that diminishes its true impact. Plethora.
Plethora.
I usually think of this word as meaning a lot of something in a positive way, like there was a plethora of fun activities to choose from at the festival. That's a common interpretation. But plethora carries a slightly different nuance. While it does mean an abundance of something, it often implies an excessive or overwhelming amount.
Okay.
It can sometimes even suggest a sense of burden or inconvenience.
Interesting. So it's not just about having a lot of something, it's about having maybe too much of it, like it's overflowing.
Precisely. Imagine a situation where you're bombarded with information or faced with an overwhelming number of choices. That sense of being inundated can be captured by the word plethora.
So if I were to say, I have a plethora of emails to respond to, it would imply that I'm feeling a bit swamped by them, not necessarily excited about having a full inbox.
Exactly. It's about that tipping point where abundance starts to feel like excess. It's about that too much of a good thing feeling.
I'm starting to see how using plethora correctly can add a layer of sophistication to my descriptions. It's a much more nuanced way of expressing abundance than just saying a lot.
It's about choosing words that convey not just the quantity, but also the impact of that quantity.
This is making me realize how much I've taken these words for granted, what other advanced words are hiding in plain sight, waiting to be understood.
Let's delve into one that's often misused in discussions about facts and information.
Factoid.
Factoid. This one seems pretty straightforward. I always thought it just meant a small or trivial fact.
That's how it's commonly used, but its original meaning is a bit more nuanced, even controversial. The term factoid was actually coined to describe something that appears to be a fact, but is actually false or unsubstantiated.
Right, really? That's a completely different meaning.
That's the risk with using factoid in its original sense. It implies a degree of skepticism or even doubt about the validity of the information being presented. It can be a way of highlighting that something may sound like a fact, but it hasn't actually been proven true.
This is a perfect example of how language can evolve and shift in meaning over time. It's important to be aware of both the common usage and the original intent behind a word. You're absolutely right. Language is a living, breathing thing that constantly adapts and changes. Our goal is to be aware of those changes and use words in a way that is both accurate and effective.
So how can we use factoid in a way that doesn't accidentally spread misinformation?
If you're unsure of the accuracy of a piece of information, it's best to avoid using factoid altogether. You could say something like, here's an interesting tidbit, or this might be a bit of trivia, but this avoids any implication that the information might be false.
That's really helpful advice. Okay, bring on the next advanced word. I'm ready to conquer some more linguistic complexities.
Let's tackle a word that often causes confusion, In discussions and debates, moot.
Moot? I've always thought of this word as meaning irrelevant or pointless. Like that argument is moot because the decision has already been made.
That's a common understanding, but it's not entirely accurate. While moot can relate to something that's no longer relevant, its original meaning is a bit more nuanced. It originally referred to a matter that is open for debate or discussion.
So if a topic is moot, it's not necessarily pointless. It just means there's room for further discussion or consideration.
Precisely. Imagine a legal case where the circumstances change, making the original point of contention no longer relevant to the outcome. The issue might be considered moot, not because it was unimportant, but because it's no longer central to the case.
That's a really helpful clarification. So it's less about the topic being irrelevant and more about its significance having shifted or diminished.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that the context has changed, and the original point of debate may no longer be the primary focus.
I'm definitely feeling more enlightened than moot after tackling that one. What other advanced word adventures await us?
Let's wrap up our exploration of advanced words with a pair that often trips people up: infer and imply.
Infer and imply. The classic conundrum. I know these words are related to drawing conclusions, but I often mix them up.
It's a common confusion. The key difference lies in who is doing the action. The speaker or writer implies something, meaning they suggest or hint at something without stating it directly. The listener or reader infers something, meaning they draw a conclusion based on what is implied.
So if I were to say, it's getting late, I might be implying that it's time to go, even though I haven't explicitly said so.
Exactly. And if you, as the listener, understood my implication, you would have correctly inferred my meaning.
I see. So it's a two-way street. The speaker sends out a subtle signal, and the listener picks up on that signal and draws a conclusion.
Precisely. It's like a subtle dance of communication where meaning is conveyed through suggestion and interpretation.
This distinction is so subtle, but it's crucial for clear communication. Misusing these words can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings.
Absolutely. Mastering the difference between infer and imply is essential for navigating conversations and interpreting written texts accurately. It's about understanding both sides of the communication equation.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. It's amazing how much depth and complexity there is to these seemingly simple words.
And we've only just scratched the surface. But I hope you're starting to see how understanding the nuances of language can empower you to communicate with greater clarity and precision.
I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident about using these words correctly. It's like a whole new world of linguistic possibilities has opened up.
And that's the beauty of language learning. It's an ongoing journey of discovery and refinement. Are you ready for a quick challenge to test your newfound knowledge?
Absolutely. Bring it on. All right. Hit me with that word challenge. I'm ready to put my knowledge to the test.
Okay. Let's see if you can recall the true meaning of nonplussed. Without looking back at our discussion, take a moment to think about it.
Okay. No peeking. I think I've got it. Nonplussed means to be surprised and confused, almost to the point of speechlessness. It's like that feeling of being completely thrown off guard and not knowing how to react.
That's absolutely correct. You've successfully decoded nonplussed. It seems our deep dive has truly expanded your vocabulary horizons.
I'm feeling pretty proud of myself right now. This whole experience has been eye-opening. I've realized that using words correctly isn't just about sounding smart. It's about communicating effectively and ensuring that my message is understood.
It's about wielding the power of language with precision and care. Choosing words that accurately reflect not only what we want to say, but also the subtle nuances of meaning we wish to convey.
You know, it's funny because I used to think that vocabulary was just about memorizing definitions. But this deep dive has shown me that it's so much more than that. It's about understanding the history, the etymology, the subtle shades of meaning that make each word unique.
It's about recognizing that words are not static, but dynamic. They evolve over time, their meanings shifting and adapting to reflect the changing world around us.
And that's what makes language so fascinating. It's a living, breathing entity that connects us to the past, informs our present, and shapes our future.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I encourage you to continue exploring the fascinating world of language. Pay attention to the words you use, the words you encounter, and the way they impact your understanding of the world.
I know I will. This has been such a rewarding journey. I'm walking away with a newfound appreciation for the power of words and the importance of using them correctly.
Remember, language is a gift, a tool that allows us to connect, create, and inspire. Let's use it wisely.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Happy wordsmithing. Okay, so let's be real for a sec. Small talk, right? It can be like the most awkward thing ever. Like when you're stuck in a situation and you know you should be chatting, but your mind just goes blank. Anyone else feel me on that? But get this. What if I told you that this deep dive could actually turn that dread into pure confidence? And we're going to do it using a source you'd never expect. A video script, get this, for people learning English.
I know, right? Sounds a little out there. But seriously, this script is full of stuff that goes way deeper than just language. It's like a secret masterclass in how humans connect, hidden inside an English lesson.
Okay, I gotta admit, when you first mentioned this source, I was kind of like, how can something for total beginners help someone who's already fluent?
That's fair, totally. But the cool thing here is, by breaking small talk down into these simple steps, it actually shows you the psychology behind how we connect. Like, it's a cheat sheet for building rapport, even if you never needed help with English in the first place.
So it's more about understanding the, deeper game, not just memorizing lines.
Exactly. For example, the script makes a big deal about greetings and weather talk, stuff we might think is just filler.
Yeah, I always thought that stuff was kind of pointless.
Right. But they actually serve a super important purpose. Like, humans are literally wired to bond over shared experiences.
Okay.
Even something as simple as complaining about the heat or, whatever the weather's doing.
Okay, yeah, I guess I can see that.
It creates that instant common ground, that we're in this together feeling, which is huge for starting any kind of connection.
Wow, that's actually so true. I never thought about it that way.
And the script goes even further. Instead of those boring old greetings like, "Hi, how are you?" it gives you phrases that fit the specific situation so you get a better response.
Oh, I like where this is going. Give me an example.
So say you're at a party. Instead of that robotic, "Hi, how are you?" try something like, "What brings you here?"
Way more interesting, right?
Way more. It's like you're actually interested, not just saying words. Exactly. It shows you're paying attention and they actually get to share something about themselves. It's what they call a strong bid in, like conversation analysis stuff. Each thing we say is a bid to connect.
Ooh, I'm digging this bidding concept. So we're all just out here trying to make the strongest bid to connect.
Totally. And this script is giving us all the winning moves. Another one they have is, instead of just saying nice weather, you could say something like, "This weather's crazy, right?"
It's like inviting the other person in on the joke. I like it.
Oh.
So it's making small talk feel, less robotic. But what really stood out to me was the role-playing part.
Ah, yes. That's where the magic really happens. The people who made this script, they get it. Knowing the right words isn't enough. You got to actually practice using them. And role-playing is the best way to do that.
But what if you don't have someone to practice with? Isn't that kind of, weird to do alone?
For sure. But you can totally do it in your head. It's called mental rehearsal. Basically, you just picture yourself in different situations.
Hold on. So you're saying, by just imagining myself rocking these small talk moments, I'm actually getting better at it in real life.
You got it. Might sound a little strange, but neuroscientists have found that when you rehearse something mentally, your brain fires up the same way it does when you're actually doing the thing.
No way. That's so cool. It's like training your brain for social situations, like a cheat code for confidence. I'm already feeling less terrified about networking events or, just parties in general.
It's crazy, right? How powerful our brains are. Like, this script really shows you how to use that power to, level up your social skills.
I like that, level up. So we've talked about greetings, weather talk, even practicing in your head. What else does this script have up its sleeve?
Okay, so one thing that really impressed me was the questions. They go way beyond those typical boring questions like, "Where are you from?" or "What do you do?" The usual suspects.
Yeah, those can be so snooze fest sometimes.
Right. Instead, they give you all these questions that are actually interesting, designed to, spark real conversations.
Okay, I'm all about those real conversations. Tell me more. Give me the good stuff.
So instead of asking, "What do you do?" which can feel kind of like a job interview, they suggest asking, "What do you like to do for fun?"
I mean, that's a classic for a reason, right? It gets people talking about what they're actually passionate about.
Exactly. It's like you're inviting them to show you their real selves, not just their, LinkedIn profile. And if you really want to go deeper, you could try something like, "What's the most interesting thing you've done lately?"
Ooh, I like that one. It's like a sneak peek into their adventures. You might even discover you have some cool stuff in common.
Totally. Plus, it shows you're actually curious about them, not just trying to fill the silence. And they even have specific questions for different situations. Like, if you're at a dinner party, you could ask, "Have you tried any good restaurants lately?"
Perfect. Everyone loves talking about food. Instant conversation starter right there.
It's true. It's something we can all relate to, like enjoying a good meal. Okay, so we've covered greetings, weather talk, asking interesting questions, even mental rehearsal. But what about when you're ready to, make your escape? Does the script help with that too?
Yeah, like how do you end a conversation without being rude?
Don't worry, they got you covered. They have a bunch of different closing phrases depending on the situation. From a simple, "it was nice talking to you," to something more like, "hey, we should grab coffee sometime."
Oh, I love that they include those follow-up suggestions.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really do click with someone, and it's good to have a way to, keep things going.
Exactly. It shows you're confident and interested, which is always a good look. And even if they can't meet up, it still leaves a good impression. Like they'll remember you as someone who actually wanted to connect.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed, right? You never know where those initial conversations might lead. What about those times when you just need a quick, casual exit, though, like you're running late or something?
No problem. They have those too. They suggest things like "catch you later" or "have a great day." Those are perfect for keeping it light and friendly without feeling like you have to hang around forever.
Okay, so whether you're aiming for a lifelong friendship or just a quick chat, it sounds like this script has given us a whole toolbox for navigating the social world.
Yeah. It's like they took all the guesswork out of small talk and gave us a clear path to follow. It's pretty amazing.
And what's so cool is that this script, even though it's for people learning English, it actually shows us some really deep things about human connections, like a reminder that we all want to feel understood, even in those little everyday conversations.
So true. And I think that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. We're not just learning phrases, we're learning about what makes us human and how even a short conversation can make a difference, like create a ripple effect.
It's like we're seeing the world through a whole new lens now, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us to the best part, putting it all into practice. We've talked about a lot today, the different phases of small talk, how to make a bid for connection, even practicing in your head. But now it's your turn, dear listener. Take these ideas and make them your own.
Yes. This is where the real transformation happens. We've given you the tools. Now it's up to you to use them. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. The goal isn't to become some kind of small talk robot.
Exactly. Be yourself, be genuine, and use these techniques to connect with people in a real way. So let's recap the top 3 things we've learned from this unexpected deep dive into, mastering small talk. First, small talk isn't just random. There's a structure you can follow to make those conversations flow.
Second, the words you use actually matter. This script has given us tons of phrases that are interesting, thoughtful, and perfect for different situations.
And third, practice, practice, practice. Whether you're practicing in your head or even role-playing with a friend, the more you do it, the more confident and natural you'll become.
It really is freeing, right? Yeah. Knowing you have these tools, it takes away that fear of messing up or saying the wrong thing.
For sure. It's like having this, secret weapon for social situations. And honestly, the biggest thing I'm taking away from this is small talk doesn't have to be something you dread. It can actually be fun, a way to connect with people,
100%. What about you? What's sticking with you from all this? What did you find most helpful from looking at this script?
It's funny. I think what resonated most was realizing that everyone, even people who seem super outgoing, they've probably felt that awkwardness too. This script shows that small talk is a skill, something you can learn and get better at, just like anything else.
Right. It's not like some people are born knowing how to do it and others aren't.
Exactly. It takes so much pressure off. You can just approach those conversations with curiosity, like a little game. Just see what happens.
I love that. A little game. It really can be like an adventure.
Yeah.
Discovering something new about someone, even if it's just a tiny thing.
And it reminds you that even those small moments, a quick chat, a smile, they can all make a difference. It's like we're all connected in this big web, and every conversation adds to that,
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into, the surprisingly interesting world of small talk, I want to leave you with this. Think about the next time you are in a situation where there's going to be some small talk. Maybe it's a party or a work event, even just grabbing coffee. What are you most excited to try out from all the stuff we talked about?
Such a good question.
Yeah.
And hey, remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Just be yourself, be genuine, and see what happens. You might be surprised how fun and even meaningful those small conversations can be. So go out there and conquer the world of small talk. We believe in you.
Welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today we're going to be exploring, your English learning journey. using a script for a video for English language learners. It's going to be like a deep dive within a deep dive, really. So no matter where you're at, beginner, advanced, somewhere in between, there should be something here for you.
Yeah, I think it's so cool how this script uses like real stories from other people learning English, to like inspire. It's like we're all on this journey together,
Totally. And speaking of journeys, the script like starts off by asking this big question, right? What made you want to learn English in the first place? The why behind your adventure, basically. They give this example of a learner, Anna, and her goal was she just wanted to watch TV, like without subtitles. And what I thought was so cool about that was like, it was totally, coming from her, like she just wanted to do it, not because someone told her she had to or anything. Right. Like those are the best reasons, when it comes from inside.
Yeah. For sure. Knowing your why can really make a difference, I think, especially when things get tough, When you hit a wall, you just don't feel like studying. It's like having a compass to keep you, heading in the right direction.
I love that, the compass. So I'm curious, what was your why, when you started out? Take a second to think about that. It's worth, revisiting it as you keep going, too. Now, the script also digs into how where you are can affect your learning. It gets that not everyone can be like surrounded by English speakers all the time, but it kind of challenges us to get creative.
Yeah. This story about Raj really stuck with me. He lives in this village where literally no one speaks English. And so he basically turned his whole house into this like learning tool, sticky notes everywhere, using English for like everyday stuff. It just proves you don't have to be in some English speaking country to learn it well.
It's amazing, right? Talk about resourcefulness. He didn't wait for the perfect situation. He just made it himself. And this actually leads perfectly into what the script talks about next. How to, take all that time we waste and turn it into learning time.
Oh, yeah. Like when you're scrolling on your phone or whatever, and it's not even like fun anymore.
Exactly. But imagine if you could use that time to learn instead. The script mentions Maria, and she would spend like 30 minutes every night on, I think it was TikTok, and she swapped that for English learning videos, and guess what? In just a couple of weeks, her vocabulary exploded.
Wow.
See? Totally doable. And what's even cooler is you can do this throughout your day, right? Like when you're commuting, waiting in line, even just doing chores. You can listen to podcasts, use apps, just sneak in little bits of English here and there.
Yeah. Just make it a part of your life, The more you can do that, the more natural it all feels.
Exactly. The script then kind of switches gears and talks about common mistakes that can, slow you down. And this is where I think your expertise is going to be so helpful. One of the first things it mentions is like getting too hung up on grammar, to the point where you're not even really speaking. It's easy to just memorize all the rules, but language is really about talking to people, right?
Absolutely. Grammar's important. Don't get me wrong. But sometimes I think it gets too much focus, like it's more important to be able to speak fluently and confidently, even if you mess up a little. It's about finding that balance, I think. What do you think?
Oh, 100%. I totally agree with that. You could know all the grammar in the world, but if you can't have a conversation, what's the point, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like you learn how to play an instrument, but then you never actually play any music.
Exactly. You just practice scales all day long. Okay, so the script's next point, I think this is something we've all dealt with, being scared to make mistakes. I mean, every language learner goes through that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I think it's so important to, change how we think about mistakes. They're not like failures. They're actually like feedback.
Yeah.
Each mistake is a chance to learn and get better.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It takes the pressure off, And this kind of leads into the third mistake they talk about in the script, which is not practicing regularly. We've all been there, right? Like crazy study sessions and then nothing for weeks.
Yeah, I've totally been there. It's always better to do a little bit every day than a lot all at once.
Yeah.
It's like you wouldn't go to the gym once a month for 8 hours and expect to see results. You got to be consistent.
So true. Short, consistent workouts, that's the key. Like the script mentions this learner who went from like these huge study sessions every now and then to just doing 30 minutes a day every day. And they saw way more progress.
It's amazing, right? How much difference just a little bit each day can make.
Yeah.
Our brains, they actually learn better that way too, through repetition and like slow exposure, not cramming.
So instead of trying to do it all at once, just find little ways to fit English into your day, right?
Exactly.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and look at what the script says about, learning English if you don't live in an English-speaking country.
Yeah.
Which can feel like a huge obstacle, but the script has some pretty encouraging examples.
Yeah, I was really interested in that part.
It comes back to what we were saying before about creating that immersive environment, even without actually being around English speakers. And technology can really help with this, right?
Totally.
Like apps for language exchange, online forums, even streaming services with subtitles.
There's so much out there.
Right. Like in the script, they talk about Marco from Spain, and he basically made like his own little English world at home, reading news in English, watching English YouTubers, even talking to friends online from other countries.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's like bringing the English-speaking world to you.
You don't even have to get on a plane.
Exactly. Which leads perfectly into the scripts like Final Challenge, focus on output.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just understand English. You got to use it, by speaking or writing.
Yeah, that's where the real learning happens, I think. Getting out there and actually using the language. I know it can be scary at first, but the more you do it, the easier it gets.
The script suggests a few things you can try, like recording yourself speaking and then listening back to see what you can improve.
Well, that's a good one.
Or joining a speaking group, or even just writing like a short paragraph in English every day.
I like that.
Just little things to get you practicing,
The key is to find what works for you and then make it a habit. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Even 5 minutes a day can make a difference in the long run.
And as we start wrapping up this deep dive here, I think one of the most important things to remember is learning English, it's a journey, right? And every little thing you do, it brings you closer to your goals.
That's a great way to put it.
It's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. I mean, we've talked about so much, right? Like from that whole why thing to making your own little English world. But what really sticks out to me is how much the script is all about, like, doing stuff.
Oh, yeah, totally. You can't just sit there and hope you'll learn English.
Right. You got to get out there and use it. And remember how we talked about making mistakes? The script wants us to think about those differently, too.
Yeah. They're not like the end of the world.
They're actually how you get better.
Like little stepping stones.
I love that. So as we wrap up this whole deep dive into learning English, I have one question for you. And it kind of goes back to that output thing we were talking about. What's one small step you're going to take this week to actually use your English?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Could be anything, really. Record yourself talking for a minute, write an email in English, even just chat with someone online.
It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing.
Exactly. Just something small but consistent.
Like we were saying before, 5 minutes a day. It all adds up.
We've explored a ton of tips today and heard some pretty inspiring stories. I bet there are a few that really resonated with you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So think about those and how you can use them in your own learning. And remember, learning English, it should be fun, not a chore.
Totally. It's an adventure.
Embrace those challenges, celebrate how far you've come and never stop exploring. Happy learning, everyone. Okay, so ready to dive into something kind of interesting?
Always.
All right, so this masterclass script we found claims it can get you to advanced English fluency.
Oh, wow.
In just 1 hour.
Okay.
Pretty bold claim, right?
Yeah, an hour to fluency.
Yeah, so we're going to break it down, see if it lives up to the hype.
That's good.
Maybe you're someone who's prepping for a presentation or just brushing up on your English skills. Or maybe you're just curious about language learning hacks. Whatever your reason, we're going to dig into this script, see what it offers.
Unearth those nuggets.
Exactly. Unearth the nuggets, see what it really has to offer.
Yeah.
And what I thought was interesting is right away, it kind of skips the usual grammar drills and vocab lists.
Right.
It jumps right into the practical stuff, how to sound more confident, how to adapt to different situations, really just connect with your language.
I like that. That's a good approach.
Yeah, I thought so too.
It's very practical.
Yeah, and one of the first things it encourages you to do is use contractions naturally.
Oh, okay.
Like saying, I've done it differently instead of, I would have done it differently.
Yeah.
Simple, but it makes your speech flow better, I think.
Absolutely, yeah, it does.
And that leads right into this idea of connected speech.
Right.
The script points out how native speakers often link words together.
Right.
So, for example, what do you want to do becomes what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
It might feel a little awkward at first,
Yeah.
but it's a key to sounding more natural.
Yeah, I agree.
So I can see how that would take some getting used to, especially if you've been trained to pronounce each word carefully.
Absolutely.
But I can also see how it would make you sound more like a native speaker.
For sure.
Now, the script also doesn't shy away from some challenging vocabulary either.
Oh, okay.
So there are words like ephemeral, resilient, ambivalent, even ostentatious and serendipitous. Wow. Do you think they chose those words for a specific reason or just trying to impress people?
Well, I think it's a mix of both.
Okay.
Because, expanding your vocabulary, important.
Right.
But they are carefully chosen to be kind of memorable.
Yeah.
And impactful. Like they use ephemeral to describe a sunset.
Oh, right.
It kind of helps you grab the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
But then also appreciate the nuances of it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's not just about sounding smart. It's about using the right words to express yourself clearly.
Exactly.
And speaking of colorful language, they've also included some idioms in this.
Okay.
Things like burning the midnight oil, bite the bullet on the same wavelength.
Right.
Are those common idioms that someone might encounter in everyday conversation?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Idioms can be tricky because their meaning isn't always clear.
Right.
But they add so much personality and cultural flavor to your English.
Like on the same wavelength is a good way to describe clicking with someone.
Right, when you're just like, we get each other.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that one too. You could easily use that in conversation, whether you're networking or just hanging out with friends.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to something the script emphasizes quite a bit, pronunciation.
Right.
It's not just about saying the words correctly.
Right.
It's about intonation.
Yes.
Stress and rhythm.
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
They even point out how just changing the stress on a word can change the meaning entirely.
Yeah, like photograph versus photography.
Exactly.
Yeah, simple shift, but a world of difference.
A big difference.
It's amazing how much nuance there is to pronunciation.
For sure.
And the script actually encourages you to play around with it.
Oh.
They suggest you practice different sentences with rising and falling tones.
Oh, interesting.
To see how it changes the meaning
of
what you're saying.
I like that. So pronunciation is definitely a key element of sounding more fluent.
It is, for sure.
But the script doesn't just give you these tips and leave you to figure it out on your own.
Right.
They actually try to tie it all together in a real-world scenario, a networking event.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's not just a generic script about exchanging business cards or whatever.
Right.
They've woven in those elements of fluency that we've been talking about. So they suggest starting with a confident introduction, but then using a more engaging question to spark a real conversation.
Ooh, I like that.
Something like, what inspired you to get into your field?
That's a good question.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, it's open-ended, shows genuine interest.
Right.
And it avoids those typical small talk cliches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that question too. And they encourage you to build on that initial connection. Instead of just nodding and saying, that's interesting.
Right.
They suggest transitioning smoothly with a comment or a question that shows you're actively listening.
Yeah.
Something like, that's fascinating. Have you considered expanding into other markets?
Oh, nice.
What do you think?
Yeah, I like that. It shows you're engaged, you're thoughtful. Yeah.
So this networking scenario is where they try to bring all the pieces together.
Okay.
It's where you can put those fluency techniques into practice.
Right.
But the big question remains, can you really achieve all of this in just 1 hour?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical about achieving complete fluency in such a short time.
Okay.
But the script does a good job of highlighting the most important areas to focus on. I think it gives you a taste of what's possible, and that's a valuable starting point.
So maybe it's more about giving you a framework, a set of tools and techniques that can help you continue to develop your fluency. It's like a jumpstart, not a complete overhaul. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it succeeds in that.
Okay.
The script is packed with practical tips and exercises.
Yeah.
And even if it takes you more than an hour to master everything, you can start implementing some of these strategies right away.
So it's not about instant fluency, but about gaining valuable insights and building a solid foundation.
Exactly.
And speaking of building a foundation, I'm curious what the script says about practice and immersion.
Yeah.
After all, even the best techniques won't get you very far without consistent effort.
You're absolutely right. Fluency is a journey, not a destination. You've got to immerse yourself in the language as much as possible. Speak fearlessly. Constantly reflect and refine your skills.
So it's not just about completing the masterclass. It's about integrating these techniques into your daily life.
Exactly.
Making English a part of your routine.
That's the key.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
We have.
But there's much more to unpack.
Lots more.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore even more tips and strategies for achieving advanced English fluency.
Looking forward to it. Welcome back. So last time, we were talking about how this script emphasizes practical skills over rote memorization.
Right.
We touched on connected speech, vocabulary building, even using idioms effectively.
Yeah.
But we left off on a bit of a cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah, pronunciation.
Yeah, that whole pronunciation piece.
The script suddenly turned into a vocal coach.
Right.
Yeah, urging you to pay attention to things like intonation, stress, and rhythm.
Exactly.
So I'm ready to dive deeper into those pronunciation secrets. Where do we start?
Well, we already touched on how word stress can completely change a word's meaning.
Right, like with photograph versus photography.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the script takes it a step further. It highlights sentence stress as well.
Oh, okay.
It shows you how emphasizing different words within a sentence can dramatically alter its meaning.
Okay, do you have an example?
Of course. So they use the phrase, I didn't say H.E. stole the money.
Okay.
Now imagine stressing each word in turn.
Right.
You could be accusing different people.
Oh, wow.
Or even denying the accusation entirely just by shifting the emphasis.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Like it adds a whole other layer of meaning.
Right.
Yeah, beyond the words themselves.
Exactly.
And then there's intonation,
Yeah.
the rising and falling tones of our voice.
Yes.
So the script suggests practicing with simple phrases like, I can't believe it. With a rising tone, that's amazing. With a falling tone.
Yeah.
Do those small changes really make that much of a difference?
Absolutely. Think of it like adding punctuation to your spoken words.
Oh, okay.
A rising tone at the end of a sentence can turn a statement into a question,
Right.
while a falling tone can express certainty, finality.
Okay.
It's crucial for conveying your meaning and sounding more natural.
So it's like adding emotion and emphasis to your words.
Excellent.
Is this something that people often struggle with when learning English?
It can be,
Okay.
especially for learners whose native languages have different intonation patterns.
Right.
But the good news is it's something you can improve with practice.
Okay, good.
The script even suggests recording yourself speaking
Oh, wow.
and listening back.
I know. It can be cringy.
It can be, but it's a great way to identify areas where your intonation might need a little work.
Yeah, for sure. I can see how that'd be helpful,
Yeah,
even if it's a little embarrassing at first.
that's a good tool.
So are there any other techniques that the script recommends for improving pronunciation?
Well, they suggest some interesting exercises,
Okay.
like repeating phrases while exaggerating the intonation and stress patterns.
So just really going over the top with it.
Yeah, it might feel silly, but it helps to really internalize the rhythm and flow of the language.
I'm all for silly if it works.
Me too.
Like a workout for your voice.
Exactly.
Thrower.
Another technique is called shadowing, where you listen to a native speaker and try to mimic their pronunciation and intonation.
Oh, interesting.
You can use podcasts, audiobooks, even movie scenes.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like having a personal pronunciation coach right in your ear.
Exactly. Plus, it's a fun way to immerse yourself in the language.
And speaking of immersion, the script emphasizes that a lot.
Right.
It encourages you to surround yourself with English as much as possible.
Yes. Watch movies, listen to music, read books, chat with native speakers if you can.
Yeah.
The key is to make English a part of your daily life.
Not just something you study in a textbook.
Exactly.
You know, it's interesting they bring up immersion
Yeah.
because earlier when we were discussing those advanced vocabulary words, I was thinking, how often is someone really going to use a word like ostentatious in casual conversation?
Right.
But if you're immersing yourself in the language, you're bound to come across it in different contexts.
Exactly. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Immersion helps you absorb those nuances of the language in a way that just memorizing definitions can't.
Right.
You start to understand how words are used in different situations.
Yeah.
You develop a more natural feel for the language.
So immersion isn't just about practicing speaking.
Right.
It's about absorbing the language through listening, reading, and watching.
Yes, making it a part of your overall experience.
Okay, let's shift gears for a moment and revisit that networking scenario.
Right.
I'm curious to hear more about how they incorporate all these fluency techniques into that real-world situation.
Sure. So you remember that the scenario starts with a confident introduction,
Right?
but then they encourage you to move beyond the typical small talk.
Mm-hmm.
Ask a more engaging question.
Like, what inspired you to get into your field?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that question.
It's a great way to show genuine interest.
Right.
And start a more meaningful conversation.
What else do they recommend?
They suggest transitioning smoothly to related topics. Showing that you're actively listening and adding to the conversation. You might say something like, "That's fascinating. Have you considered expanding into other markets?"
Okay, yeah.
Keeps the conversation flowing, and it allows you to showcase your knowledge and insights without being too pushy.
It's all about finding that balance.
Yeah.
Between being confident and being engaging.
For sure.
Not an easy feat.
No, it's not.
But this scenario seems to provide a pretty solid framework.
It does.
For navigating those tricky social interactions.
Exactly.
Okay, so they've covered introductions, engaging questions, smooth transitions, even closing the conversation gracefully.
Right.
But can you really master all that in an hour?
Well, like we said earlier, fluency is a journey,
right?
Not a destination.
Yeah.
So while an hour might not be enough to make you a master networker, this scenario provides a valuable blueprint.
Right.
And you can adapt these techniques to other social situations as well.
So it's about taking those core principles, confidence, clarity, adaptability, and applying them to any interaction where you want to communicate effectively in English.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the final section of the masterclass script.
Okay.
Remember those 3 key tips they emphasized?
Immerse yourself.
Speak fearlessly.
Reflect and refine.
Right. This seemed like pretty solid pieces of advice, but what do they really mean by immerse yourself?
Right.
Are they talking about moving to an English-speaking country?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
While that would certainly be immersive, there are plenty of ways to create an English-speaking environment wherever you are.
Okay.
You can watch movies and TV shows with English subtitles, listen to podcasts and audiobooks, read news articles and blogs.
Okay.
Key is to find something you enjoy and make it a regular part of your routine.
So it's about making English a part of your everyday life.
Exactly.
Not just something you study in isolation. Okay, what about that second tip? Speak fearlessly. That's easier said than done for a lot of people.
It is, yeah.
Any advice for overcoming that fear?
Well, the script encourages you to kind of reframe your thinking about mistakes.
Okay.
Instead of seeing them as failures, view them as opportunities to learn and grow.
It's about embracing the journey.
Exactly.
And accepting that you're not going to be perfect right from the start.
Exactly. The more you speak, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
Right.
Don't be afraid to seek out opportunities to practice.
Okay.
Whether it's with a language partner, online communities, or even just talking to yourself in English.
Those are great suggestions.
Yeah.
Now, what about that last tip? Reflect and refine. What are some concrete ways that someone can put that into practice?
Self-awareness is key here.
Okay.
Record yourself speaking English. Listen back to it.
Right.
Take note of areas where you could improve. Maybe it's pronunciation, maybe it's grammar, maybe it's the flow of your sentences.
Right. Yeah.
The act of listening to yourself critically can be incredibly revealing.
For sure. And these days, there are so many tools to help you do that.
There are.
Like language learning apps often have recording features. And you can even find online communities that are dedicated to pronunciation practice.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of simply paying attention to how native speakers use the language.
Oh, okay.
Listen for those subtle nuances of pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm.
Right.
The more you observe and imitate, the more natural your English will become.
So it's about being a conscious learner.
Yes.
Actively seeking out feedback and working on those areas where you want to improve.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive.
We have.
We explored pronunciation techniques, the importance of immersion. We even revisited that networking scenario.
We did.
And we dug into those 3 key tips for continued learning.
Yes.
Immerse yourself, speak fearlessly, reflect and refine. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into this masterclass, the one that promises to unlock advanced English fluency in just an hour.
Yeah, big promises.
Huge. So we've unpacked a lot of those strategies.
Really?
We've experimented with pronunciation, even explored that networking scenario.
Yep.
Now let's step back, consider,
all right,
what are the real takeaways here?
What are the gems?
What can someone actually use to boost their English fluency?
Good question.
So it's been quite a journey, right?
It really has, yeah.
We've gone from those kind of building blocks of fluency, confidence, clarity, adaptability,
right,
to some very specific techniques like connected speech, mastering intonation, even sprinkling in some of those colorful idioms.
For sure.
I think we even played vocal coach for a while.
Oh, did?
Trying out some of those pronunciation exercises.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was fun. So as we wrap up, what stands out to you as the most valuable takeaway from this whole thing?
For me, it's the focus on practical application.
Okay.
This script doesn't just throw a bunch of rules at you.
Right.
It gives you concrete examples, it encourages you to experiment, and it even puts you in a real-world situation.
Yeah, like with that networking event.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about taking those concepts and making them usable in your daily life.
Yeah, it's not about reaching some level of perfection.
Right.
It's about using the language to connect with others, to express yourself, to navigate the world around you.
For sure.
And it reminds you that fluency is an ongoing journey.
It is.
It's not a destination.
Not at all.
You know, early on, I was pretty skeptical about that whole fluency in an hour thing.
Yeah, me too.
But I have to admit, this masterclass offers a pretty solid springboard for anyone who wants to improve their English.
Absolutely.
It gives you a taste of what's possible and inspires you to actually take action.
For sure.
So for our listener who's been with us this whole time, taking it all in, what's the one piece of advice you would leave them with?
I would say don't wait for perfection.
Okay.
Just start speaking.
Right.
Embrace every opportunity to practice.
Yeah.
Even if it feels a bit awkward at first, every mistake is a learning opportunity.
That's true.
Each interaction brings you closer to fluency.
I love that. It's about taking those small steps.
Yeah.
Being consistent and celebrating those wins along the way.
Exactly.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Not at all.
There are tons of resources out there. Language learning apps, online communities, podcasts like ours.
For sure.
All there to support you.
Absolutely.
So find what works best for you. Stay curious.
Yeah.
Never stop exploring the language.
I like that.
And have fun with it.
Yes.
Learning a language shouldn't feel like a chore.
No, it should be enjoyable.
It should be enriching.
Absolutely.
So embrace the challenges, celebrate your successes, and never stop trying to be the most confident and fluent version of yourself. That's a perfect note to end on. So thanks for joining us for this deep dive into English fluency.
It's been fun.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights.
Yeah.
And feel inspired to continue your own journey.
Absolutely. And now that you've heard all this, what's one area of your English fluency that you're going to focus on? Until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and keep those language fires burning.
See you next time.
All right, so are you ready to dive in? Today, we're going to help you sound like, well, a natural English speaker.
Like you were born speaking it, right?
Exactly. And we're going to do that with a script.
Oh, a script. For what?
It's for a video for English language learners.
Cool. What's the topic?
Phrasal verbs.
Ah, phrasal verbs. Those can be tricky.
Yeah, they can be, but this script, it breaks them down by learner level.
Yeah, that's helpful. So we can...
Yeah, so we'll sort of jump around, find the most interesting parts, no matter what your level is.
Yeah, let's uncover the secrets of sounding natural and fluent.
Exactly. So I was looking at the beginner section, and it's funny how many...
Beginner section, okay.
Yeah, so, basic phrasal verbs. And some of them are so common, we don't even think about them.
Like what?
Like get up. I mean, we all do it every morning.
It's true, we do. Or go to sleep. These are things we do every day.
Right. And even something like sit down. It's not just about taking a seat. It's like an invitation.
Yeah, it sets the scene. Like, sit down, dinner's ready. Or, please, sit down, make yourself comfortable.
Exactly. It adds a whole other layer of meaning.
And it's so natural.
And, another one that I thought was interesting is turn on and turn off.
Oh, yeah, we use those all the time.
Like turn on the lights, turn off the oven.
It's like we're constantly interacting with our world through these verbs.
And they often come in pairs, right?
Ooh.
With opposite meanings.
Learn one. You got the other one too?
Yeah. And another pair, put on and take off.
Oh, yeah. Clothes, shoes, you name it.
Exactly. You put on your clothes in the morning, take them off at night.
And again, it's so natural, so effortless.
It is. It's like a hidden code.
A code to unlock fluency.
I love that. Okay, what about pick up? That one's interesting because you can have multiple meanings.
Yeah, you can pick up a book, pick up your friend from the airport.
Right. The context is key.
It tells you what it means.
It's like a puzzle, but a fun one.
It is. Okay, another fun one. Look for. Everyone's always looking for something.
Right. Your keys, your phone, that missing sock.
Have you seen my keys? I've been looking for them everywhere.
Exactly. And It's not just about physical objects.
You can look for a solution to a problem, look for information.
You're right. It's about a search, a quest.
And we're always on a quest for something, aren't we?
That's a great point. Okay, so we've talked about some pretty basic phrasal verbs.
Yeah, just the tip of the iceberg.
But now I want to get into some that add a bit more color.
Oh, yeah, let's spice things up a bit.
Let's express some feelings, some opinions.
Let's dive deeper.
I'm ready. Are you?
Let's go! It's amazing, right, how phrasal verbs can be so simple, but also so expressive.
Yeah, it's like they add this whole other level of meaning.
Exactly. Like give up, for example.
Oh, yeah, give up. We've all been there.
Right. That feeling of, I can't do this anymore.
Like when I tried to make that 3-tiered cake for my friend's birthday, I almost gave up.
Oh, no. What happened?
The first layer, it just collapsed.
Oh, that's frustrating.
It was. I wanted to throw in the towel, but he didn't.
Well, good for you, perseverance. But you see, that's what give up captures, that feeling.
It does. Okay, what about run out of? That seems pretty basic.
It does, but it's not just about having nothing left. It's like there's a sense of urgency.
Urgency. How so?
Like running out of time on a deadline.
Oh, yeah, or running out of patience.
Exactly. Or even running out of gas in your car.
That's a good one. Okay, what about call off? Is that the same as cancel?
Well, they're similar, but call-off is more sudden, more unexpected.
Oh, I see. Like calling off a wedding.
Exactly. Or calling off a search.
Wow. That does add a sense of drama.
It does. It's like everything's changing.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What about look after? That seems pretty simple.
It does, but it's more than just watching something. It's about taking care of it,
Oh, like looking after a child or a pet.
Yeah, or even a plant. You're responsible for it.
You're right. There's a sense of responsibility there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this one I find interesting. Find out.
Find out. It's like discovering something new.
It is. Like a secret.
Exactly. You can find out the truth, find out someone's secret.
Or find out how a story ends.
Right. It's all about that moment of revelation.
It is. Okay. And speaking of moments, what about work out? Now, that one has multiple meanings.
It does. You can work out at the gym.
Right. Get those muscles working.
Or you can work out a problem.
Find a solution.
Exactly. So versatile, right?
It is. Okay, how about throwaway? It seems pretty straightforward.
It does, but think about it. It's not just about getting rid of something.
What else could it be?
It can be about letting go, like throwing away old ideas, old habits.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
It's like a fresh start.
I like that. Okay, last one for this round. Catch up. Now, that one sounds pretty social.
It is. It's about connecting with people,
Yeah, like catching up with friends.
Exactly. Or catching up on work if you've been away.
Oh, right. So it can be social or professional.
It can. It's about bridging that gap, whatever it may be.
I like that. Okay, so we've covered some pretty interesting phrasal verbs so far.
We have, and we're just getting started.
I know. Are you ready for the advanced level?
Bring it on. I want to see what other gems we can uncover.
Okay, let's dive in. Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle some advanced phrasal verbs.
The big leagues.
I know, right? But honestly, looking at some of these, I'm a little intimidated.
Oh, which one's got you stumped?
Well, like put up with, for example. It just seems so negative.
It can be, yeah. But sometimes you need to express that feeling, like tolerating something.
Okay, I see what you mean, like putting up with noisy neighbors or something.
Exactly. Or a long commute, or even bad weather. It's about dealing with those less than ideal situations.
Okay, that makes sense. What about bring up? That one seems a bit more, I don't know, delicate.
It is. It's about introducing a topic, but in a smooth way.
So not just blurting something out.
Right. Like if you want to talk about something sensitive, you bring it up carefully.
Right. I get it. Okay, now this one I always struggle with. Back out. Does it always make you sound unreliable?
Not necessarily. It can mean changing your mind, but it doesn't always have to be negative.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, imagine you agreed to go to a party, but then you get sick. You have to back out.
Oh, right. So it's not like you're breaking a promise. It's just a change of plans.
Exactly. It's all about the context.
Context is key.
Yeah.
Okay, what about step up? That one sounds more positive.
It is. It's about taking action, taking responsibility.
Like stepping up to a challenge.
Exactly. Or stepping up to help someone.
Oh, I like that. Okay, take over. Now that one sounds a bit intense.
It can be. It's about taking control of something.
I'm just taking over a company.
Yeah, or even something smaller, like taking over the cooking when your friend's tired.
Right. It's about being in charge. Okay, last one. Break down. That one seems like it has a million meanings.
It does. A car can break down, a plan can break down, even a person can break down.
Wow, so many possibilities. It's amazing how one phrasal verb can be so versatile.
It is, and that's the beauty of phrasal verbs. They add so much color and nuance to the language.
I totally agree. Well, I think we've broken down quite a few phrasal verbs today.
We have, and hopefully our listeners feel more confident using them.
Exactly. Remember, it's all about practice and having fun with the language.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
That's right. So, to all our listeners out there, keep exploring the world of phrasal verbs. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover some new favorites along the way.
And if you do, be sure to share them with us. We'd love to hear about your phrasal verb adventures.
Until next time, happy learning.
Okay, but really, think about it for a sec. How often are we all using words that kind of, sabotage what we're trying to say? Like little sneaky words making us sound less confident.
It happens more than you think. And it's wild how these tiny words can really affect how people see us. Yeah. Especially at work, right?
Totally. Which is why we're diving into this article, 11 words you should stop saying immediately. We're not just going to list them, though. We're breaking down why they're bad, and most importantly, giving you swaps so you can sound more powerful.
Think of it like upgrading your communication one word at a time.
First up, the word just. Ugh, I'm so guilty of this. You're writing an email and it's like, I just wanted to follow up, or just a quick question. Why does just make us sound so unsure?
It's subtle, but just makes your request smaller, almost like you're apologizing for it. Imagine waiting to hear back about a project and you're like, I just wanted to follow up on the proposal. What's that say?
Makes me sound hesitant, like I shouldn't even be asking.
Right. But what if you just said, I'm following up on the proposal? It's tiny, but you sound way more confident taking charge.
No more tiptoeing, you own it.
Exactly. And that shift can change how your message lands big time.
Okay, another tricky one. Actually, this feels like a trap almost.
Oh, it can be. Actually, often slips out when we're correcting someone or giving a different view. But imagine someone's like, actually, I think we should go a different way. How's that feel?
Like they're shutting down my idea before even thinking about it?
It can sound condescending, even if they just meant to add to the discussion. Taking out actually makes it more collaborative. Like instead of, actually, I have a question about that, you can say, I'm curious about this part.
More like inviting a chat, not shutting it down.
Perfect. Still saying your thing, but it keeps the flow going, respectfully.
Now, maybe this one feels like almost self-sabotage, wouldn't you say?
It is. You wouldn't use maybe if you were really sure of your idea, so why hedge?
I guess it's like we're scared to commit to our thoughts, you know?
And that hesitation can hurt your credibility, especially at work. Decisiveness often equals competence. Instead of, maybe we should consider this. We should consider this. Hear the difference.
It's like you're leading, not just dipping a toe in.
Right. Showing confidence in your idea, inviting others to follow.
Okay, this one bugs me. Saying sorry when there's no need. Why do we apologize for, existing, basically?
It's a thing, isn't it? Do we really need to apologize for asking a question or taking up space or just saying what we think?
No way. And all that apologizing can actually make us seem, smaller, less confident.
You're right. And the key is, there are way better ways to say things. Instead of, sorry to bother you, try thanks for your time, or I appreciate your input.
Shows respect without sounding unsure. It's like shifting from apologizing for existing to being grateful for their attention.
Small but powerful, right? Changes how you come across.
All right, another confidence killer, I think. It's everywhere, but it makes what we say weaker.
It's a verbal tick for lots of us. But think about how much stronger it is without it. I think this is the best option versus this is the best option. Huge difference.
You're right. It's a fact now, not just an opinion, maybe.
And sure, sometimes you want to say it's your view, not universal truth. But even then, there are better ways.
So instead of, I think, you could say, from my analysis, or based on what I've seen.
Exactly. You're owning your view, but it's more, sophisticated.
Like leveling up your communication, swapping out the wishy-washy stuff for strong, impactful language.
And that's what this deep dive's about, right? Giving you the tools to communicate clearly, confidently, like you mean it. It's crazy, right? How even little changes to how we talk can make us, more confident overall. When we pick words that sound sure, it changes how others see us, but also how we see ourselves.
That's like telling your own brain, hey, I got this.
Totally. And speaking of believing in yourself, let's talk about can't. This one messes with us, keeps us from, doing our best.
Oh, yeah, can't. It's so easy to just say, I can't do this, especially when something's hard.
It's almost automatic, but it's a trap. When we say can't, we're basically stopping ourselves from growing, from changing.
Like we're putting limits on ourselves before even trying.
And honestly, we can do way more than we think we can. So what if instead of I can't, we say something, well, more powerful? Like, I haven't learned this yet, or I'm still figuring it out.
I like that. It's not saying you'll never do it, just that you're on the way there.
Exactly. And that small change can help you stay motivated, keep going when things get tough.
It reminds me of that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. What we say really does affect what we believe.
So true. So let's pick words that lift us up, both when we talk to ourselves and to others.
Okay, almost done with the list, but a couple more big ones. Let's do but and. I mean, they're not bad words, but how we use them matters, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about the situation and what you're trying to say, but often goes after something positive and it kind of ruins it.
It's like giving a compliment and then taking it back. You did great on that presentation, but I think you could have been more engaging. Oof.
Exactly. The but erases the good stuff you just said.
Yeah.
Makes people feel, discouraged.
So what's better?
And swap out the but for and it's way more constructive. Like, you did great on that presentation, and I think we can work together to make it even more engaging.
You're not just criticizing, you're helping. It's about fixing things, not just pointing out what's wrong.
And that's such a good attitude to have, right? At work, anywhere.
All right, got to address the big one. Literally, people misuse this all the time. It's almost funny how wrong it gets.
Yeah, it's become this word people use to emphasize stuff, even when it's not actually true.
Yeah.
But using it wrong makes you sound less credible, like you don't know what you're talking about.
I think it shows how important it is to use the right words. When we choose carefully, we say what we mean more clearly, and it has more impact.
Couldn't agree more. It's about respecting how powerful words are and using them to your advantage. So let's all try to use literally, correctly, and really all words, thoughtfully.
Okay, before we go on, gotta mention kind of and sort of again. They seem small, but they weaken what you're trying to say.
Oh, they're so wishy-washy. They make you sound uncertain, like you don't really care. Imagine telling your boss, I'm kind of excited about this new project. Not exactly inspiring, huh?
Sounds like you'd rather be doing something else.
Exactly. So instead of that, let's use words that are, stronger, more definite. Like, I'm intrigued by that, instead of I'm sort of interested. More specific, more interesting.
And it shows you're really paying attention, involved in the conversation.
Right on. Now, sticking with words that fill space but don't add anything, let's talk about like. It's supposed to connect with people, but it can actually make you sound less smart.
It's so ironic. It's like people say all the time, especially when they're nervous.
But it's even better. Just pausing.
Yes. Silence is way more effective than filling the space with, nothing.
Gives your brain a second to think, so you can choose better words.
And it makes you sound more thoughtful, calm, which can be really powerful.
And while we're at it, how about, this one comes up when we're not sure if the other person's getting what we're saying. We need them to agree with us.
It's like we're doubting ourselves, even though we're the ones with the ideas.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
You know what you're talking about. You can explain it clearly. Yeah. Trust yourself. Let that confidence show.
That's a good point. We don't always need someone to tell us we're right. We can just own it.
Exactly. Now, one last thing about how our language affects how we interact with people. We've talked about specific words, but it's also about the vibe we give off.
Right. Sometimes it's not just the words, but how we say them.
Totally. Think about, I have to do this versus I get to do this. It's just a different way of looking at it, but it changes how you feel about it.
It's like turning something you have to do into something you want to do.
It's about feeling like you have control, even when things are tough or boring.
I love that. We really can choose how we see things just by how we talk about them.
And that's kind of the main point of all this. It's not about banning certain words. It's about being aware of what we say, picking words that show what we believe, make us feel confident, and help us really connect with people.
Honestly, I'm kind of fired up now to use all this stuff. It's amazing how just changing a few words can make such a difference in, everything.
It really shows you how powerful language is, right? We don't always realize how much what we say shapes like our whole experience.
So for our listeners, what's like one thing they can do today to start using all this?
Good question. I think the best way is to just pick one thing, one word from our list that, stood out to you. Maybe you use it too much or you think it's holding you back.
Okay, let's say I pick just. What then?
Try to, completely stop using it for a week. Pay attention to when you want to say it in emails, conversations, even just thinking to yourself.
Like a little challenge? See what happens when you change just one word.
Exactly. I bet you'll be surprised. See how people react when you're more direct, more confident. And notice how it makes you feel. You might find that not saying just makes you sound more sure of yourself. And D actually makes you more confident.
So it's like teaching your brain to use better words by default.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's like exercise. The more you use those confident words, the more natural they'll feel.
Makes sense. So it's not about being perfect right away. It's about getting better over time.
Exactly. And hey, you don't have to do this alone. Tell a friend about the episode or a coworker and help each other out. You could even make it fun. Point out when someone slips up.
That's a good idea. It's always easier to stick with something when you have someone to do it with.
And who knows, maybe you'll start this chain reaction of confident communication at work everywhere.
What a great thought. Well, we've definitely given everyone a lot to think about today. It's been, really interesting and inspiring. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how to use words to be more confident and clear.
It's been great diving into this with you. And to everyone listening, remember, what we say really matters. So let's choose our words carefully. And until next time, stay curious, stay confident, and keep on learning.
All right. So are you ready to really boost your English fluency? I mean, take it to that next level.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Well, today we're diving deep into phrasal verbs.
Those are essential.
They really are. They're like the secret code to sounding really natural,
Yes.
Especially if you're already pretty comfortable with the basics of English.
Right, you got to get those phrasal verbs down.
Exactly.
And what I think is so fascinating about them is the way they kind of weave themselves into just everyday English.
Yeah, it's like you can't escape them, can you?
No, you can't. And they're not just about casual chit-chat.
Right.
They pop up everywhere. We'll see them in professional settings, travel scenarios, even when you're talking about learning new things or improving yourself.
Yeah, you're right. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
We've got 25 essential phrasal verbs to unpack today, and I'm telling you, you'll be surprised by how their meanings can shift depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's true. It's sometimes the same phrasal verb can have so many different meanings.
Right.
It's they're these little chameleons.
Right.
Blending in, adding that extra layer of meaning.
Subtle mastery, huh?
Yes. That's what sets apart a fluent speaker.
For sure. So let's start with those everyday conversations, the ones we have all the time. I'm thinking about turn up and run into. They seem so simple on the surface.
Right. Yeah.
But I bet there's more to them than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Take turn up, for example.
Okay.
If someone says he didn't turn up for the meeting, that kind of has a negative connotation to it, right?
You're like, where were you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Implies a lack of responsibility. Maybe even a little bit of disrespect.
For sure.
But, if you're at a party and the volume's too low, you might say, can you turn up the music?
Yeah, that's true.
Same verb, totally different vibe, right?
It is. It's like the context around the phrasal verb, it colors it, gives it that extra layer of meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And run into kind of has that element of chance, surprise. If you say, I ran into an old friend, that paints a much more vivid picture than just saying oh, I met an old friend.
Right. I see what you mean.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. You can almost feel the surprise and joy in that encounter.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about the work and business category.
Okay.
And I noticed in this section, look into and come up with. These are verbs you'd probably hear, in an office setting.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Maybe in a boardroom, who knows?
Yeah, boardroom, meeting, these verbs are all about clarity and action in a professional setting.
Right, being efficient.
Efficient, yeah. If you say we need to look into this issue that sounds a lot more, proactive, it's more decisive than just saying we need to investigate.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And come up with that one's all about that creative problem solving.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
I like that. So it's almost like these phrasal verbs cut through all the fluff.
Yes.
They just get straight to the point, which is so important at work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Especially in a fast-paced environment.
Yeah. And imagine you're in a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And you're struggling to express those key actions.
It would be painful.
Yeah. So mastering these, can make you a much more effective communicator at work.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's get ready to explore the world a little bit. Travel and socializing. When it comes to this, I thought about pick up and drop off.
Yes.
They're essential for getting around, making plans,
Absolutely. I mean, think about that classic travel phrase. Can you pick me up from the airport?
It's so common.
Yeah. It's direct. It's clear. It gets the message across.
Effortless.
Yeah, effortless. Yeah. And drop off too. I'll drop you off at the station on my way. Makes, coordinating plans so much smoother.
Yeah, super smooth.
Super smooth.
You know what's interesting about those two is it highlights the social aspect of language,
I know.
If you offer to pick someone up or drop them off, it's more than just the action, It kind of conveys a sense of, I don't know, helpfulness, consideration.
Right, you're going out of your way for them a little.
Exactly. Okay, and speaking of subtle shifts in meaning, check-in. That one seems to have multiple personalities.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Depending on the context.
It does.
Right.
You've hit the nail on the head there. Check in at a hotel, that's a formal procedure, right? Yeah. But if you say check in with a friend, that's just casual.
Totally different.
It implies that you care.
Right. You're just seeing how they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a perfect example of how, phrasal verbs just adapt and evolve, They just change.
Yes, they do.
Depending on the situation. All right, it's time to level up our skills even more. Learning and self-improvement. I'm intrigued by catch up on and figure out, they seem to capture the essence of personal growth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really do. Catch up on, that kind of implies that you're making an effort, right?
Yeah.
A conscious effort to, stay current, expand your knowledge.
Yeah, it's active learning.
Yes, and figure out, has that problem-solving vibe, right?
It's that aha moment.
Yes, it's about overcoming challenges, pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Which is part of personal development, right?
Absolutely. Embracing those aha moments.
Yeah.
And recognizing that, learning it's a journey.
It never ends.
What's fascinating is how these verbs kind of empower you to talk about your learning journey.
Yeah, to actually articulate it.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
So thinking about those learning goals, is there a particular phrasal verb from this category that resonates with you right now?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Something that you could see yourself using, on your self-improvement journey.
Let me think. I think figure out, actually. I like that one because, I am always trying to figure out new ways to approach problems.
Yeah.
Or just learn from my experiences.
Absolutely.
It's a verb that shows that continuous growth.
Yes.
Which I find motivating, It never stops.
It never stops.
So I like that one.
It's figure out becomes a reminder to just stay curious.
Right.
And embrace that whole learning process.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know what you're gonna learn next when you're trying to figure things out.
Exactly.
I like that.
That's a good one.
It really is amazing how much meaning these little verbs pack. They really make our communication so much more dynamic.
They do, yeah. It's they unlock fluency somehow.
Yeah.
Make English sound, more natural.
Speaking of unlocking things, I have a fun idea.
Okay.
How about we do a little quiz just to test what we know about these phrasal verbs so far?
Oh, I love a quiz.
Yeah.
Let's do it. See if our listeners have been paying attention.
Okay, first question. Imagine you're working on a project and it's just not going anywhere. You finally decide to just stop working on it completely.
All the time.
Right. So which phrasal verb would you use? Would you say that you gave up on the project or looked into it or maybe turned up at the meeting?
Okay, so we're looking for the verb that means to just stop completely, abandon it.
Exactly. And the answer is?
Gave up.
Gave up, yeah.
Yeah, you gave up on that project.
It definitely doesn't feel good, but
yeah.
It happens. Sometimes things just don't work out.
It's a fact of life.
Yeah.
All right, ready for the next question?
Get me with it.
Okay, so imagine you're trying to understand a really complex problem.
Yeah.
And you want to get to the root of it, all the little details.
Okay, so you're really trying to solve it, not just scratch the surface.
Exactly, yeah. So which phrasal verb fits best here? Would you figure out the problem, go over the details, or run into a solution?
So this is all about being really analytical, right? Like really digging into the problem.
Yes, exactly. Thinking it through.
So the answer must be...
Go over.
Go over. That's right.
Yeah, you're going over all the details.
Okay, last question. You're getting ready to give a presentation.
Okay.
And you want to practice it beforehand. Which verb describes that? Would you show up the presentation, come up with a new idea, or maybe run through your speech?
This one is all about getting ready, rehearsing, making sure you know everything.
Yeah. Making sure it all flows, all the pieces are in place.
Exactly. So the answer has to be...
Run through.
Run through.
Yeah.
You got to run through that presentation.
Make sure you're prepared for anything.
Exactly.
Well done, listeners. You guys are pros. You're really getting the hang of these verbs.
You're going to be fluent in no time.
But this is just the beginning. I mean, there's so much more out there, when it comes to phrasal verbs.
Oh, yeah. So many. It's like a whole other world.
It is like another level of fluency.
It is.
So before we finish our deep dive today, I want to talk about how to actually make these 25 verbs part of your everyday English.
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand them.
Right.
But how do you actually use them naturally,
That's the real challenge. It's all about like bridging that gap between knowledge and actually applying it.
Yeah.
The good news is with phrasal verbs, like they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to how native speakers use them in conversations, in movies, and songs.
Yeah, that's good advice. Like just be more aware.
Be more aware. Yeah, you'll start to notice patterns and kind of pick up on the nuances.
Yeah, it's like immersive learning,
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
Try using these phrasal verbs in your own conversations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You might stumble a bit at first.
Yeah, of course.
But that's okay. That's all part of the learning process.
Right, you're not going to get it perfect the first time.
Exactly. Yeah. But the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
Of course. It's like anything, right? Practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
But sometimes just like jumping in can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips to make the learning process a bit more, organized?
Oh, absolutely. Like a great technique is to use flashcards.
Oh, yeah.
Like write the phrasal verb on one side and then maybe like an example sentence on the other.
Yeah, classic.
Classic, yeah. That way you're not just like memorizing the definition. You're actually seeing it in action.
Right. You see how it works in a sentence.
Exactly, yeah. Another good strategy is to keep like a phrasal verb journal.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Every time you encounter a new one, just jot it down.
Yeah, like your own personal dictionary.
Exactly. And you can add an example sentence too.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed at how quickly your vocabulary will grow.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Before we wrap up completely, I'm just curious, do you have like a go-to phrasal verb? One that you just use all the time?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think mine would probably be breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
It's so versatile.
Mm-hmm.
You can break down a problem, you can break down a concept, you can even break down a wall.
Yeah, it's true.
It just means to analyze something, make it more simple, make it more manageable.
Yeah, and it works in so many situations. I think that's what's so cool about phrasal verbs, right?
Yeah.
They're adaptable.
Yes.
And once you start using them, your English just sounds so much more natural.
It really does.
Yeah.
So just remember, this deep dive, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep practicing, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yes. Learning should be fun.
It should be fun, yeah.
Yeah.
The more you enjoy it, the more you'll learn.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day-to-day, what phrasal verbs are you going to try to use?
Yeah, good question.
Will you brush up on your skills? Will you look out for some new opportunities?
I might try to dream up a new adventure.
Ooh, I like that one. The possibilities are endless.
They are. It's been so fun diving into the world of phrasal verbs with you.
It has been.
Happy learning, everyone.
And that's a wrap on our exploration of these fascinating little, bundles of words. We hope you feel inspired to embrace phrasal verbs, make them a part of your everyday English, because fluency is a journey, not a destination, right? And every step you take brings you closer to mastering this amazing language. Thanks for joining us.